Chapter 633. Everyone was left dumbstruck as they saw this scene before their eyes. Had Yishuan already planned it? He hasn't sustained any injury. Had everything been a plan to trick everyone? It looked so. He was extremely terrifying if it was true. But it wasn't so because of his plan. After all, these small schemes were nothing for these people. What was so dreadful was the might required for this plan. Even a great sage would have been ripped apart by such a dreadful joint attack. However, Yishuan had survived it. Moreover, he hadn't sustained any injury. This was extremely terrifying. Yishuan didn't stop after he had blown away Fong Lung in one fist. He continued to chase him. In fact, all this wasn't any trap in reality. His strength wasn't too tyrannical either. The fact was that his Phoenix regeneration technique was extremely tyrannical. He could restore to his peak condition as long as his body hadn't fallen apart. Fong Lung's speed had been extremely fast a moment ago. Yishuan hadn't restored to his peak condition yet. However, he had already recovered enough to fight him. Yishuan was now pursuing Fong Lung. He had just an instant. However, he had already taken advantage of this short period of time and had restored to the peak. The dreadful auras swept out and rose to the sky. This indicated that Yishuan was in his most peak condition. Phoenix regeneration technique was extremely powerful. This was also a reason because of which he had dared to challenge several experts at once. He hadn't thought that he could provoke several experts at the same time and not get injured as per his strength. He was sure that he would sustain injuries. However, he could quickly recover as long as he didn't get blasted on the spot. That's why he had dared to do something so unprecedented. Any other person in his place would have been ripped apart on the spot, even if they had more tyrannical strength than him. Yishuan had already prepared for his safety, since he had provoked them on the spot. He had challenged them after he had had assurance. Only a real powerhouse could pull this off. He had gone up so boldly. Only a mad genius could think of it. Yishuan, how is it possible? Fong Lung looked at Yishuan in disbelief. He couldn't believe that Yishuan, who had been blown away a moment ago, had now blown him away in one fist. He was convinced that he hadn't been mistaken. After all, Yishuan had sustained serious injuries and had almost died. There was just half second left. That's why he had taken the initiative and attacked. He wanted to take the lead and kill Yishuan in order to re-establish the Xianyuan Palace Hall's supreme prestige before everyone. The Xianyuan Palace Hall had become a big joke for everyone because Li Yifeng had been effortlessly killed by Yishuan. Li Yifeng had vowed to kill the culprit, but he himself was annihilated by Yishuan instead. The Xianyuan Palace Hall would become an enormous joke if Fong Lung didn't make sure that Yishuan was dead. Moreover, he needed to kill Yishuan with his own hands. This was intolerable for any disciple of the Xianyuan Palace Hall who was ambitious for the position of the Lord of the Xianyuan Palace Hall. Therefore, he just had to take the initiative and kill Yishuan first. However, his attempt had been thoroughly ruined by Yishuan now. Yishuan hadn't become weak. In fact, he was much stronger than what Fong Lung had imagined. He was already exhausted. Still, he had blown Fong Lung away in one fist. Such strength could be considered as incomparably terrifying. I told you that today is the day you die. It seemed from Yi Zaiwen's ice-cold voice as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. The Big Bang Stardust fist suddenly smashed down. Bang! Fong Lung's body was exploded by the Big Bang Stardust fist. The defensive divine tools on his body were also blown to smithereens as this happened. Even his body had been disintegrated by Yishuan. Yi Zaiwen's body emitted blood light at this time. Fong Lung's corpse was absorbed along with the fragments of his divine tools. Yishuan, I've already entered the most crucial time of becoming a great sage tool. I need a great amount of flesh and fragments of divine tools to accelerate my evolution. Yimo's voice reverberated in Yi Zaiwen's mind, and Yishuan immediately became pleasantly surprised upon hearing this. Yimo had fallen into deep sleep several days ago, after reaching to the most crucial stage since he wanted to put his entire effort into evolving into a great sage tool. Yishuan hadn't expected that Yimo would suddenly wake up at this crucial moment. However, Yishuan promptly nodded. After all, Yimo needed it. So he would put his life on stake to accomplish this. Moreover, the people in front of him were his enemies. After all, they were coveting those 500 million primary spirit dawn, or wanted to climb up whilst treating him as their stepping stone. They wanted to become famous through one fight after intercepting and killing him. It was extremely deplorable. It took too much time to explain, but everything had obviously happened very quickly. Fong Lung had been defeated by Yi Shiwen only in a flash, and he had instantly died. The spectators were left dumbstruck by everything that had occurred before their eyes. In fact, they were staring blankly. After all, they hadn't expected that they would see such a scene. Fong Lung was the topmost expert, but he was annihilated like this in 2 fists. Everything seemed extremely unimaginable. However, it looked very normal after they thought about it carefully. Yi Shiwen truly had such strength. Aguda had also been killed by him like this earlier. The other experts' attacks also arrived at this time, and Yi Shiwen was once again blown away by the attacks just like earlier. People had also thought that Yi Shiwen was truly dead earlier. However, they had received a tight slap on their faces in the end, and they didn't dare to make such a judgment now. That's because the result of such a judgment was that Yi Shiwen had taken advantage of their negligence and had killed Fong Lung. Some people had disdain in their hearts. They were already determined that this was Yi Zaiwen's trap to attract some people. However, he had already used this trap a moment ago, and he was thinking to use it once again now. So, how could they be fooled once again? Nobody dared to rush up and launch an attack on Yi Shiwen after learning from Fong Lung's tragic fate a moment ago. This was just as expected. Their worries had also bought Yi Shiwen the most crucial time to recover. Yi Shiwen stood up. His slim figure appeared tall and straight while facing all the mighty experts of the human race. However, nobody dared to look down upon him because of his ordinary appearance. He appeared like a world-famous god of war in this moment. He looked unrivaled and extremely dreadful. The surrounding place turned quiet wherever his eyes went. All of you who want to kill me will perish today. Yi Zaiwen's loud voice didn't have a thread of fluctuation. These people have greatly underestimated me. They think that they can obtain the reward after killing me. However, nobody has dared to challenge me alone. I would have a whole new level of respect for them if they were like Buluo. Yi Shiwen forced into the army of experts after saying this. A golden light flickered, and he rushed in. His speed was extremely fast. Many experts didn't get enough time to respond, and he had already rushed inside the group. He was also inside this group, so they were hesitating even if they wanted to attack. It had become impossible for them to attack unscrupulously like they had moments ago. This was also what Yi Zaiwen's goal was. He didn't need to be worried about his life, even if he sustained injuries occasionally, as long as they couldn't attack him unscrupulously. After all, he also knew that these experts were extremely dreadful. In fact, almost half of the entire experts of the true martial world had gathered here. Even a great sage would die if he came under their combined attack. He had almost died a moment ago. Fortunately, it was just almost, and he had gotten enough time to recover. Bang! An expert didn't get enough time to react, and Yi Zaiwen's fist had already smashed him. Each expert was easily killed by just Yi Zaiwen's one fist. Then, their bodies disintegrated in the sky, and were absorbed by his heavenly source mirror within a split second. It transformed them into a kind of nourishment that could accelerate the process of becoming a great sage tool. Friends, we are still slow. We must attack quickly. This man is incomparably fierce. He's vicious and merciless. His strength is incomparably tyrannical. It'll be impossible to match him if we don't join hands. An expert finally spoke up in a fearful tone. Yi Shiwen seemed immortal to these people. The combined attacks of so many people couldn't affect him. This was like an insurmountable barrier. Moreover, this barrier was killing them. Yi Shiwen would kill them if they didn't unite. They would only be killed by him if they waited any further. They were already doomed when they had arrived to kill Yi Shiwen in order to obtain those 500 million primary spirit dawn. This thought had flashed past their minds. However, they hadn't anticipated at that time that Yi Shiwen would force them into such a desperate situation on his own. Yi Zaiwen's speed was incomparably fast. He had already killed 5 or 6 top-tier experts of the late stage of half-step Great Sage realm. His efficiency was extremely high. He was treating these people as small and weak creatures, just like a rare genius of a generation. A loud shout entered everyone's ears at this time. You people don't need to worry. He isn't immortal. He has just cultivated a powerful healing technique and nothing more. This isn't any secret in the true martial university. Everyone shot a glance. This man was the young barbarian king of the 100 Barbarians Cave. He hadn't moved until now. He hadn't attacked yet. Instead, he had been observing Yi Xiwen's trick. He just thought that he might not be able to catch Yi Xiwen even if he attacked. Countless people had been fighting. However, he had gotten the opportunity to see through Yi Xiwen's trick. Yi Xiwen has been blown away twice and has sustained serious injuries. This is fact. I've seen it with my own eyes. So, I can't be mistaken. He might have been wrong the first time, but he had confidence that he couldn't make the mistake the second time. Then there is only one possibility. He has cultivated some incredible healing technique. A greedy look flashed in his eyes as he thought this. To be continued. Chapter 634. Which martial arts cultivator didn't have a healing divine technique? After all, nobody could say that they would never sustain injuries. One must recover within a short time if they had sustained injuries. This had become an essential thing for all experts, and it was already shocking if someone could recover to this extent within a few breaths. How could others figure out what the young barbarian king had thought? After all, he was a mighty, influential figure among the core disciples. He was a famous person who was just one step away from the Great Sage realm. Their eyes were brimming with greed as they looked at Yi Xiwen after they thought this. Yi Xiwen certainly can't have such strength without countless adventures under his belt. He must have innumerable treasures and magical powers. We might rise above others if we can rob even some of those treasures. On the other side, in another microcosm, countless visions were fixed on the merit list. A group of divine senses were locked upon the merit list so that they could quickly find out any change in the merit list. Moreover, all the mighty experts who were present here had used all kinds of methods and had found out that a stunning battle was going on in the Devil World. The true martial university's Yi Xiwen had challenged all the experts alone. It was a scary fight. It was an exceptional fight which had surpassed all the other fights of its kind before and since. Nobody had dared to challenge so many experts like this apart from Yi Xiwen. None of the mighty experts present here could think of provoking everyone even if they were the scariest experts of the true martial world. Even if they could set off an earthquake with the stamp of their feet. This was as if someone among them had abruptly spoken and challenged everyone else. One must know that Yi Xiwen hadn't challenged the weaker experts. Nobody's realm was lower than his among all the experts who had surrounded him. So, these people believed that either he was insane or he had some backup. That's why he had done so. Some people believed that Yi Xiwen was insane, while others believed that he certainly had some support. Yi Xiwen is insane. Such an expert rarely appears in the true martial university. But I'm afraid that he'll also fall quickly now. Awesome. Ha ha. He truly deserves to be a disciple of my true martial university. He has enough courage. I wasn't so courageous back in the day. The divine senses of many people were firmly locked upon the merit list. They were paying attention to the names that were changing in the merit list. A lot of changes had occurred. Some people had been killed by the devils, and the rankings of some people on the merit list had increased unceasingly after killing the devil experts. However, they weren't paying attention to these changes. Dead. Fong Lung is dead. Someone suddenly shouted, and everyone's gaze fell onto the merit list. Fong Lung's name had been somewhat near the top where everyone could see it just in a glance. Everyone saw it now. Fong Lung's name had been omitted from the merit list, and so the expert behind him had moved up by one rank. The mood of all the experts from the Xianyuan Palace Hall sank as they saw this scene. The Xianyuan Palace Hall might not have been wiped out from this Devil World competition with Fong Lung's and Li Yifeng's death. However, there wasn't much difference between getting wiped out and the death of these two supreme core disciples in succession. The true martial university's enemies were under the entire sky. However, the Xianyuan Palace Hall's condition wasn't good either. After all, the true martial university was consistently trying to restore their former glory in the true martial world. However, other forces were also trying to replace it. Countless years of dispute had given rise to immense hatred between these forces. So, how could they not throw stones at others who had fallen when they had gotten such an opportunity? Everyone was left dumbstruck. They hadn't anticipated that this could be the situation. Yi Shiwen hadn't died. On the contrary, the Xianyuan Palace Hall's Feng Lung had died first. Another group of experts had been fighting with him. However, they had also been killed along with him. Yi Shiwen, it's your last day today. You won't get the opportunity to escape. Several experts had decided. Those who were coveting Yi Zaiwen's treasures and magical powers hooted one after another. They had already gone crazy in this moment. There was no one among them who didn't want to rob Yi Shiwen. A dreadful war had begun like this in the devil world. These people crazily attacked Yi Shiwen to kill him. And Yi Shiwen had also burst into these outstanding heroes. The entire world trembled under the fluctuations of the attacks of the several hundred dreadful experts of the late stage of half-step Great Sage Realm. Many people believe that Yi Zaiwen's action of breaking into the crowd was equal to following the path of one's own doom. Nobody could save him. However, it wasn't so in his opinion. Even a great sage would be ripped apart under the combined attack of so many experts. Therefore, he mustn't give them an opportunity to attack together. So, he had burst into the crowd instead. He was surrounded by people from all directions. However, it was an enormous safety for him because they couldn't attack unscrupulously because other people were also present around him. A golden light fluctuated inside the crowd at a flying speed. An expert of the late stage of half-step Great Sage Realm died at Yi Zaiwen's hands every time it disappeared and appeared. Everyone was rushing towards him like madmen and was getting killed within no time. Smell of blood pervaded the sky, and whoever smelt it felt like vomiting. The smell was from Yi Zaiwen's blood and the blood of his defeated enemies. Yi Shiwen faced less attacks because of rushing into the crowd. However, dreadful attacks still unceasingly struck his body. An ordinary person would have already died on the spot by now. However, it was Yi Shiwen. His body was extremely tough. It wasn't possible to kill him on the spot since he could soon recover with the help of the Phoenix regeneration technique. That's why he had survived till now. Otherwise, an ordinary person would have already died and disintegrated by now if they had been in his place. However, Yi Shiwen couldn't avoid injuries either. Sometimes, the wounds were so deep that his bones were clearly visible and blood had splashed out. He had continuously sustained injuries. However, his fighting prowess and imposing aura unceasingly grew stronger and stronger. The flesh and blood of those experts who had been blown up by him were absorbed by his heavenly source mirror, while their wealth was seized by him. These experts weren't as rich as him. However, they had already entered the late stage of half-step Great Sage Realm. Each individual might have had as much as 10 million primary spirit dawn. So, the total wealth would reach to an astronomical amount. Moreover, he had burnt even more primary spirit dawn and had instilled them into his body in order to support the consumption. He had the support of the primary spirit dawn. However, he couldn't avoid injuries while facing the assault of so many experts. Anyway, the consumed primary spirit dawn were getting replenished at an astonishing rate. The primary spirit dawn were being consumed at every moment. However, he could at least seize 1 million primary spirit dawn from all those he had killed. And this amount was pretty good. After all, many little drops make an ocean. Therefore, this was also a huge treasure in a way. It was even more so in his opinion. However, those experts attacked him even more madly. They had so far just heard that Yi Shiwen had some extremely formidable healing technique. But they had now seen how many times Yi Shiwen was blown away by their combined attacks, but had tenaciously made comebacks and soon recovered to the peak condition. His imposing aura was getting restored to the most peak condition at a speed visible to the naked eye. Moreover, anyone with eyes could see how formidable his body was. An ordinary person would have been blown up to smithereens long ago. However, his body hadn't blown up, Such physical strength was truly shocking. This had given them another reason to kill Yi Shiwen. After all, who wouldn't want to barge into an army like this? Dead. The war has just begun, and my God, they've fallen so soon. It's like one person is dying every second. Countless people looked at the merit list. They wanted to see what was happening. However, astral wind was blowing in that chaotic battlefield. The void was shattered into pieces, and the chaos had leaked out. So, the divine senses couldn't explore the battlefield in this situation. Many people didn't know what was happening there. They could only judge what was happening inside by looking at the change of names on the merit list. However, one thing was certain: nothing had happened to Yi Shiwen. He was still tenaciously fighting. His name was still there on the merit list. His name was still behind 1,000 names. However, everyone's divine sense was locked upon his name on the merit list. In fact, countless pairs of eyes were fixed on his name. Yi Zaiwen's name was fluctuating. Sometimes it would get dim, while sometimes it would emit incredible rays of light. However, the names of one or a few experts were erased from the merit list every time his name emitted incredible rays of light. What kind of terrifying scene was this? My God! Yi Shiwen is against heaven's will. He'll certainly have a place among the core disciples of the true martial world if he survives. The complexion of an expert standing in the circle turned deathly pale as he said. He was almost scared to death after watching this world-shaking fight before his eyes. He and Yi Shiwen were equals. Both of them were in the sage, accomplished realm. However, he was nothing in a place like this which was filled with the experts of half-step great sage realm. Therefore, he hadn't dared to approach. He wasn't tempted even if many people had incited him to kill Yi Shiwen and rob his divine weapons and wealth. Are you kidding me? Is it that easy to deal with Yi Shiwen? Many people had seen with their own eyes how Aguda had died back then. Moreover, he knew this well that Yi Zaiwen's stuff wouldn't fall into his hands even if they managed to kill him. Dead. All are dead. So many experts have died at one person's hands. This news will shake the entire true martial world when it transmits outside. Someone cried out in alarm. His complexion had turned deathly pale after watching this war before his eyes. It has already caused a sensation in the true martial world. I reckon our forces must have also obtained this news by now. Anyway, Yi Shiwen has become famous in the entire true martial world this time. He'll certainly become an extremely terrifying person if he survives. In fact, the true martial world scene might change after several hundred years because of him. To be continued. Chapter 635. This news spread out more widely as Yi Shiwen continued to slaughter. Even those experts who hadn't been paying attention to this matter had started paying attention to it in the end because of the changes that had occurred on the merit list. After all these people were experts of the late stage of half-step great sage realm. They were elites among elites in every force. All of them had reached the top 1,000 positions on the merit list. They weren't as incredible as the top 10 individuals on the merit list. They weren't as well known either. However, they were still top-tier experts in comparison to those ordinary core disciples of Sage Realm. So, they definitely deserved respect. However, these experts had now fallen one after another just like dumplings. And their names have been erased from the merit list. Even many top 100 rankers were wiped out, and their names disappeared. There were some experts who hadn't paid attention to this matter earlier, or didn't know what was happening because they had been in closed-door training. However, they looked at the sky in astonishment for a moment. What is happening? How is it possible? Several disciples of the True Martial University were also nervously looking at the merit list in the True Martial University's Devil World encampment. The fact that Yi Shiwen had challenged several outstanding heroes had shaken the entire world. They also knew that they must stand on Yi Zaiwen's side at this time, no matter whether Yi Shiwen looked pleasing to their eyes or not. Their hearts palpitated as they watched Yi Zaiwen's name getting dim one moment and dazzling in the next. And many names got obliterated from the merit list as Yi Zaiwen's name fluctuated from time to time. Many people couldn't help but hold their breaths as they saw this scene before their eyes. They hadn't gone to the battlefield to see in person. However, They could imagine how intense this fight must be by just looking at the names of a large number of outstanding leading individuals getting erased from the merit list. So many have died so quickly. Many names have been wiped out in a split second. Their bodies and souls have been entirely extinguished. Yi Shiwen must be the one to do this. All these people are the essential part of every force. And all of them have died now. All are dead. Bai Jingwei was left dumbstruck as he saw this scene. The core disciples could be weighed as elites inside a force. They were the most important part of a force. Otherwise, they wouldn't be called as core disciples. Especially, those who had participated in the Devil World competition were elites among elites. And the experts of late stage of half-step Great Sage realm were even more so. In fact, they were the cream among the core disciples. But they had lost at Yi Zaiwen's hands this time. So, it could be said that a lot of forces must have received a major blow. He also thought that Yi Shiwen must have some support since he had dared to challenge several experts, that he must be sure that he wouldn't get defeated and also wouldn't die by the attacks. However, he hadn't thought that Yi Shiwen would slaughter them in such a terrifying way. The names that symbolized a person's existence would be erased in front of countless eyes. His speed is even more dreadful. I've never doubted his strength. I knew from the time when he had killed a Gouda that his strength was unfathomable. He must be more formidable than me. However, the crucial point lies in his speed. He has managed to kill so many experts within such a short time. What kind of dreadful strength and speed does he possess? Gao Lingxiu frowned and said she could say that she had seen Yi Shiwen growing up. Yi Shiwen had killed young Master Jin Xiu when she had seen him not too long ago. However, she could tell that young Master Jin Xiu and Yi Shiwen had been on the same level at that time. He could at most contend against the experts of initial stage of half-step Great Sage Realm. However, so many experts of the late stage of half-step Great Sage Realm had died at his hands now. In fact, he had slaughtered them just like dogs. Good. He has done outstanding service for our university by killing so many elites of every big force. He may have committed some sins in the past, but he can be forgiven. Fan Yicheng was present beside these two individuals. But he also softly spoke up at this time. His tone was still ice-cold. However, it wasn't ice-cold to a terrifying extent as earlier. His words naturally showed the resentment between Yi Shiwen and the law enforcement hall. This kind of scene wasn't limited to the Devil World. It had exploded like a pot, even in that mysterious microcosm. Several mighty lords stood up from their seats in shock. It seemed as if someone had poked the hornet's nest. These experts wouldn't have any expression on their faces on ordinary days. But they had lost their control at this time and had started to groan like madmen. The forces which had enmity with the true Martial University were even more so. Some of the experts who had surrounded Yi Shiwen were longing for his treasures and wealth. Some had even obtained instruction from their sects to eliminate Yi Shiwen. After all, Yi Shiwen had become a thorn in the eyes of many forces after he had gone and killed Shou Kuan. Li Feng, a good at all Yi Shiwen, had won the martial arts championship that had taken place between the four forces in the past, but that hadn't caused any major sensation. After all, many experts believed that it was just another low-level competition among juniors which took place every 100 years. Therefore, they believed that Yi Shiwen couldn't pose any threat to them even if he had won the championship. However, this situation was different. Yi Shiwen had already displayed astonishing strength and tricks, so they couldn't ignore his growth anymore. They wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to eliminate him if he had just been tangled among the experts of the true Martial University. However, he had challenged the outstanding heroes of the entire world now. So, this was a fair opportunity for them to kill him. Therefore, these forces had sent their most elite disciples in the Devil World competition to encircle and annihilate him. This operation was different from the single-aimed operation of those people who were longing for Yi Zaiwen's wealth. After all, these people worked in an organized manner. This was the biggest opportunity to kill Yi Shiwen. However, it had somehow turned into the biggest tragedy for them. They had almost gotten mad with anger as they saw the names of their disciples being erased one by one. After all, This symbolized that their disciples were dead. They issued heaven-shaking roars one after another. They wanted to kill Yi Shiwen in anger. They wouldn't mind killing Yi Shiwen in a slap if he appeared in front of them. They wouldn't mind killing this bastard. Those disciples were elites. They were their favorites. They weren't as precious as true disciples. In fact, the death of a few such experts wasn't a big thing. However, it wasn't easy to groom such geniuses. And they had died one by one now. How wouldn't it have made them scream in grief? It had obviously made them mad. Perhaps they would have rushed into the devil world if all the forces hadn't imposed the restriction on interference in the matters of the devil world and didn't have tacit understanding with the devil world. They would have then found Yi Shiwen and twisted his neck like a twig. It could be said that a knife had pierced their hearts along with every individual's death. It had been taken out thereafter, but the knife had gradually inscribed a name in their hearts: Yi Shiwen. The man whom they viewed as an ant was now rooted incomparably deep in the hearts of all these mighty lords, so much so that they were even willing to eat his flesh raw. Dreadful killing intentions recklessly flew out in the sky. The weakest among them were the overlords of great sage realm. Dreadful killing intentions were unscrupulously unleashed. It even seemed as if the entire microcosm wouldn't be able to bear such dreadful pressure and would definitely collapse. This kid can't be left alive. He must be killed. Otherwise, he'll become a huge threat for us. The lord of the Xian Yuan Palace Hall clenched his teeth and said. He obviously didn't think that Yi Shiwen could pose any threat to him at present. However, he might grow up into a dreadful expert in the future after several hundred years. The possibility of Xian Yuan Palace Hall ruling the entire true martial world could become non-existent if there would be another such expert in the true martial university. Many mighty lords around him also nodded and showed their consent to the words of the lord of Xian Yuan Palace Hall. They had also sent many experts to kill Yi Shiwen. However, all of them had died at his hands now. So, these lords hated Yi Shiwen's guts and were willing to kill him with their own hands. They were regretting it deep down now. My goodness! Why did you have to involve the disciples into this matter? You must look for an opportunity to kill Yi Shiwen. Find a great sage to get rid of him. Isn't so? After all, it looks far more reasonable than any other way. Moreover, many mighty lords who hadn't seen their disciples dying were hopeful. My sect's disciples should know what is difficult to handle. They mustn't jump into this madness after being fooled by greed. Heaven is protecting my true martial university. Such powerful disciples have appeared generation after generation. Yi Shiwen is a God-gifted genius. Nobody can have such a record of challenging so many experts and still succeeding in killing them. Some people lamented, while some were excited endlessly. The true martial university's disciples were naturally laughing in excitement in comparison to those extremely depressed disciples of other forces. The stronger Yi Shiwen would become, the more benefits the true martial university would obtain. And they would naturally be even happier. It's obvious that Yi Shiwen will become famous in the entire world after this fight, if he can survive. An expert of the true martial university said anxiously. Other experts also became quiet as they thought of this. We mustn't focus on the fact that the names of several experts have been erased from the merit list. It's still nothing compared to their huge number. Even Yi Shiwen might not have imagined such a scene. They could see it from the fluctuation of his name. What level of characters were they that they could even see through the devil world? They could judge what the present situation of a person would be just looking at the change in the luster of their name. It's not good. It's the young barbarian king of the 100 barbarians cave now. His name has suddenly become dim. And the names of a few disciples of the 100 barbarians cave have also been omitted. Someone suddenly blurted out in shock. Some people's gaze suddenly fell onto the merit list. They saw that the name of the 100 barbarians cave's young barbarian king was getting dimmer and dimmer. Meanwhile, a loud explosion occurred in the devil world, and young barbarian king was blown away by Yi Shiwen's punch. To be continued. Chapter 636. Chapter 636. Are you all really going to watch someone die? And Yi Shiwen felt that his heavenly source mirror was transforming at an astonishing speed. In fact, an astonishing change was occurring every second. Transforming into a great sage tool was an enormous transformation. It could be said that it would be like reaching heaven in a single bound after this transformation. One would lay the foundation for the later stages until the legendary realm, be it May Martial Cultivator or Divine Tools. And the process of transformation would begin from the Sage realm. The so-called cultivation was constantly improving oneself. One would begin to break away from the category of ordinary lives from the legendary realm. And the so-called rising to the heaven for the Divine Tools was this kind of transformation. In fact, making a breakthrough into a great sage tool from a sage tool was the most difficult breakthrough until that point. Yi Shiwen and the heavenly source mirror were closely related. The more it would transform and become stronger, the stronger he would become as well. This was like complementing each other. The heavenly source mirror itself could fend off many attacks as it would grow stronger and stronger. This would reduce the chances of him sustaining injuries. So, he could exhibit its true divine power once it would make the breakthrough and become a great sage tool. Even common great sages didn't have a great sage tool, let alone these experts of late stage of half-step great sage realm. In fact, it was impossible for them to display the entire might of a great sage tool even if they possessed a damaged one. However, Yi Shiwen was different. He had Yimo's full-strength coordination. Therefore, he could display the entire might as long as he kept consuming the primary spirit dawn. He and the heavenly source mirror had already reached the point of merging into each other like water and milk. In fact, it was almost an extended portion of his body. Other people couldn't accomplish something like this. Everyone thought that he had already gone all out. However, he himself believed that he hadn't started to feast yet. Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and looked at the young barbarian king. He had been blown far away by his one fist. The killing intention was flickering in Yi Ziwen's eyes. This young barbarian king is one of those people who are harboring malicious intentions for me. Yi Shiwen obviously wouldn't let off the young barbarian king and his subordinates after he had seen that they were plotting to kill him. He didn't know that the disciples of many forces had obtained the news from their sects to encircle and annihilate him. However, he could see that some people were harboring evil intentions for him. The only way to deal with such people was to annihilate them. This was the best solution. Yi Shiwen stepped forward. Nobody could stop him. He appeared in front of the young barbarian king in an instant. Suddenly, the young barbarian king made a move, and the space surged about. Then, a huge finger arrived whilst breaking the sky. 100 barbarians' Lu Run fingers. It was a martial technique of the 100 barbarians' cave. Yi Shiwen had come across this technique in the past. However, only a semi-sage expert had used it at that time. Therefore, the real might of the 100 barbarians' Lu Run fingers technique wasn't demonstrated. However, the young barbarian king was just a step away from the great sage realm, and he had used it in this instance. So, it displayed incredible might. Just a finger had broken the world and transformed it into chaos. It seemed as if everything in the world had broken down, and an incredible hurricane was set off. Yi Shiwen shot a punch, and it transformed into a big star. It then transformed into a profound star and exploded on that huge finger, even though the finger was like a giant pillar supporting the sky. The dreadful barbarian energies which had arrived whilst breaking through the space exploded on Yi Ziwen's hand one after another. They then cut open his golden divinities and issued incredible buzzing sounds. However, it was soon concealed by the divinity waves emitted from his body. It couldn't cause much impact on him. Yi Ziwen's fist seemed to be metal cast. No attack could shake his incredible body. A horrifying power began to boil on Yi Ziwen's body, and those barbarian energies were wiped out in an instant. The huge finger also began to break up in the sky. A muffled groan came from the young barbarian king's side. Blood was dripping from his finger, and the bones were almost broken. His eyes were filled with astonishment as he looked at Yi Shiwen. It seemed as if he was looking at a monster. One must know that his body was the barbarian god's real body, that was mentioned in the legends. The barbarian god's real body could even blow up the vault of the heaven. Barbarian god's real body was barbarian god's very own body and physique in the fables. It was a confidential technique. However, the fire cloud cave possessed it. Moreover, even a few forces of the southern wilderness had methods of cultivating the barbarian god's real body. After all of them had initially split up from barbarian god's temple, which had been the most authentic and topmost force of its time. The most outstanding disciples of each generation of these forces of southern wilderness could enjoy the benefits of transforming into the barbarian god's real body. He had never come across a more powerful body than his among his peers after undergoing the transformation into barbarian god's real body. He was like a humanoid T-Rex. He had even accomplished a feat like fighting with the demon beasts in terms of physical strength. However, he had now suffered a huge defeat while facing Yi Shiwen, who was a realm below him. Barbarian god's real body. Yi Shiwen had recognized this physique within a split second of contact. However, this wasn't the first time that he had come in contact with this physique. Qi Tian had also possessed such physique. It had been quite difficult for Yi Shiwen to defeat him in that fight. That battle was second only to the fight which he had had with Emperor Chen. So, it was extremely difficult to deal with people who possessed such physiques. Young Barbarian King was countless times more powerful than Qi Tian. Qi Tian was already known to possess Barbarian God's real body back then. However, his physical transformation hadn't been completed. However, the body of young Barbarian King, who had already surpassed Sage Accomplished Realm, had made this transformation in its entirety. Therefore, the might displayed by him was also far more from what Qi Tian had displayed at that time. However, Yi Shiwen wasn't an inexperienced youth like he had once been. After all, a decade's time was enough for him to grow up and become a person whom many people would look up to for a lifetime. Young Barbarian King had already felt that he was inferior to Yi Shiwen. Moreover, his attacks couldn't cause any effect on Yi Shiwen. He himself possessed an extremely tyrannical body. It could be said that he used to crush other people, depending upon his body. Therefore, he knew well how troublesome a person with such tyrannical body could be. One finger breaks the world. Young Barbarian King didn't get time to think much. He could only attack Yi Shiwen with his finger. He couldn't depend upon other people at this time. These people were as majestic as Yi Shiwen had expected. However, all of them were harboring evil intentions. They wanted others to take the initiative, and then they wanted to sit back and enjoy the advantages like a fisherman after Yi Shiwen had been killed by them. They didn't attack even when they saw that the young Barbarian King had been cornered by Yi Shiwen. They wanted to kill Yi Shiwen. However, they didn't have the strength to save someone from him. It must be said that there were disciples in the 100 Barbarians cave who were willing to die for the young Barbarian King. But they couldn't withstand even a single blow from Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen merely sneered while facing 100 Barbarians' Lu Run fingers, even though it had arrived while splitting the world. He then brandished his big hand. It was Fire Cloud Cave's martial technique, the Fire Cloud Cave's falling sky hand. It swept towards the 100 Barbarians' Lu Run fingers to grasp it. Bang! A dreadful power originated from the collision and emitted endless rays of light. These rays of light swept out over 1,000 miles, and the space broke down in its entirety. Many people in the surroundings were blown away by this power. They couldn't withstand such terrifying power. Bang! The young Barbarian King went out flying once again. He spouted a mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with bitter hatred. Such an expression had appeared on his coarse face. So, it was evident that he hated Yi Shiwen very much. Are you all going to watch someone die and do nothing to save them? You all will be killed one by this hunter if you don't attack. Your end won't be better than mine at that time. Young Barbarian King shouted in resentment. Many tyrannical auras were hidden in the crowd that had surrounded Yi Shiwen, and nobody among them was weaker than him. However, they didn't attack this time. It seemed as if they wanted to watch from the sidelines. Young Barbarian King has said that all of us will be killed one by this monster if we don't kill him first. A figure came out of the void. It seemed as if this man's steps were setting off ripples as his figure walked in the void. He left imprints of principles while walking. He was very formidable. He was a dreadful person who had already stepped 1 foot in the great sage realm. Everyone immediately recognized him. He is the top-tier expert of Eastern region's Great Unity Sect, Zhuxiuzhu. The Great Unity Sect was a dreadful force. It was a colossus in the Eastern region. It was said that the Great Unity Sect wasn't a native force of the true martial world. They had entered the true martial world in large scale one day, and they had gotten the command over the Eastern region when the true martial university had declined. Thereupon, they had become one of the Eastern region's superdominant forces, and Zhuxiuzhu was the strongest person among the core disciples of the Great Unity Sect. He had already become famous in the entire true martial world. He also had the accomplishment of escaping unscathed from the hands of a great sage. He was regarded as one of the strongest experts in the half-step great sage realm. He was ranked 3rd on the merit list. He was right below the member of the true martial university's heavenly punishment faction, Fanny Chung. Zhuxiuzhu must be an even bigger pressure for Yi Shiwen as compared to the young barbarian king. He truly deserved to be ranked among the top 3 on the merit list. You're a strong man. However, you'll die here unfortunately. Zhuxiuzhu looked at Yi Shiwen somewhat pitifully and said, True Martial University has sent 2 formidable men this time. You're one, and Fan Yi Chung is the other. They'll go to that Fan Yi Chung after I've killed you. The Heavenly Punishment faction had become famous in the true martial world when the True Martial University was ruling the true martial world. So, they'll go and see if they still have some standard. They'll see if they still deserve this reputation. Zhuxiuzhu was carrying a faintly visible aura on his body. The Great Unity Sect didn't pursue an ordinary martial arts way. Instead, the so-called Great Unity Way was an entirely different martial way. Every disciple of the Great Unity Sect carried a faintly visible aura. His provocative gaze apparently attempted to infuriate Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen himself didn't have good relations with the law enforcement hall. So, he didn't mind whether the Heavenly Punishment faction deserved its reputation or not. Yi Shiwen sneered. He's gravely mistaken if he thinks that he can infuriate me in this way. Come on if you want to fight. Don't try to irritate me by using this method. It's pointless. Yi Shiwen softly replied. You're a fine man, but you're overconfident as well. We can't let you succeed in this matter. Otherwise, won't we all lose face? A sneer came from the void, and another tall figure came out walking from it. To be continued. Yi Shiwen felt that his heavenly source mirror was transforming at an astonishing speed. In fact, an astonishing change was occurring every second. Transforming into a great sage tool was an enormous transformation. It could be said that it would be like reaching heaven in a single bound after this transformation. One would lay the foundation for the later stages until the legendary realm, be it may martial cultivator or divine tools. And the process of transformation would begin from the sage realm. The so-called cultivation was constantly improving oneself. One would begin to break away from the category of ordinary lives from the legendary realm. And the so-called rising to the heaven for the divine tools was this kind of transformation. In fact, making a breakthrough into a great sage tool from a sage tool was the most difficult breakthrough until that point. Yi Shiwen and the heavenly source mirror were closely related. The more it would transform and become stronger, the stronger he would become as well. This was like complementing each other. The heavenly source mirror itself could fend off many attacks as it would grow stronger and stronger. This would reduce the chances of him sustaining injuries. So, he could exhibit its true divine power once it would make the breakthrough and become a great sage tool. Even common great sages didn't 39T have a great sage tool, let alone these experts of late stage of half-step great sage realm. In fact, it was impossible for them to display the entire might of a great sage tool even if they possessed a damaged one. However, Yi Shiwen was different. He had Yi-Mo 39's full strength coordination. Therefore, he could display the entire might as long as he kept consuming the primary spirit dawn. He and the heavenly source mirror had already reached the point of merging into each other like water and milk. In fact, it was almost an extended portion of his body. Other people couldn't 39T accomplish something like this. Everyone thought that he had already gone all out. However, he himself believed that he hadn't 39T started to feast yet. Yishuan narrowed his eyes and looked at the young barbarian king. He had been blown far away by his one fist. The killing intention was flickering in Yishuan 39's eyes. This young barbarian king is one of those people who are harboring malicious intentions for me. Yishuan obviously wooed 39T, let off the young barbarian king and his subordinates after he had seen that they were plotting to kill him. He didn't 39T know that the disciples of many forces had obtained the news from their sects to encircle and annihilate him. However, he could see that some people were harboring evil intentions for him. The only way to deal with such people was to annihilate them. This was the best solution. Yishuan stepped forward. Nobody could stop him. He appeared in front of the young barbarian king in an instant. Suddenly, the young barbarian king made a move, and the space surged about. Then, a huge finger arrived whilst breaking the sky. 100 Barbarians' Lu Ren fingers. It was a martial technique of the 100 Barbarians' cave. Yishuan had come across this technique in the past. However, only a semi-sage expert had used it at that time. Therefore, the real might of the 100 Barbarians' Lu Ren fingers technique wasn't 39T demonstrated. However, the young barbarian king was just a step away from the great sage realm, and he had used it in this instance. So, it displayed incredible might. Just a finger had broken the world and transformed it into chaos. It seemed as if everything in the world had broken down, and an incredible hurricane was set off. Yishuan shot a punch, and it transformed into a big star. It then transformed into a profound star and exploded on that huge finger, even though the finger was like a giant pillar supporting the sky. The dreadful barbarian energies which had arrived whilst breaking through the space exploded on Yishuan 39's hand one after another. They then cut open his golden divinities and issued incredible buzzing sounds. However, it was soon concealed by the divinity waves emitted from his body. It couldn't 39T cause much impact on him. Yishuan 39's fists seemed to be metal cast. No attack could shake his incredible body. A horrifying power began to boil on Yishuan 39's body, and those barbarian energies were wiped out in an instant. The huge finger also began to break up in the sky. A muffled groan came from the young barbarian king 39's side. Blood was dripping from his finger, and the bones were almost broken. His eyes were filled with astonishment as he looked at Yishuan. It seemed as if he was looking at a monster. One must know that his body was the barbarian god 39's real body that was mentioned in the legends. The barbarian god 39's real body could even blow up the vault of the heaven. Barbarian god 39's real body was barbarian god 39's very own body and physique in the fables. It was a confidential technique. However, the fire cloud cave possessed it. Moreover, even a few forces of the southern wilderness had methods of cultivating the barbarian god 39's real body. After all of them had initially split up from barbarian god 39's temple, which had been the most authentic and topmost force of its time. The most outstanding disciples of each generation of these forces of southern wilderness could enjoy the benefits of transforming into the barbarian god 39's real body. He had never come across a more powerful body than his among his peers after undergoing the transformation into barbarian god 39's real body. He was like a humanoid T-Rex. He had even accomplished a feat like fighting with the demon beasts in terms of physical strength. However, he had now suffered a huge defeat while facing Yishuan, who was a realm below him. Barbarian god 39's real body Yishuan had recognized this physique within a split second of contact. However, this wasn't 39T the first time that he had come in contact with this physique. Chi Tian had also possessed such physique. It had been quite difficult for Yishuan to defeat him in that fight. That battle was second only to the fight which he had had with Emperor Chen. So, it was extremely difficult to deal with people who possess such physiques. Young Barbarian King was countless times more powerful than Chi Tian. Chi Tian was already known to possess Barbarian God 39's real body back then. However, his physical transformation hadn't 39T been completed. However, the body of young Barbarian King, who had already surpassed Sage Accomplished Realm, had made this transformation in its entirety. Therefore, the might displayed by him was also far more from what Chi Tian had displayed at that time. However, Yi Xuan wasn't 39T, an inexperienced youth like he had once been. After all, a decade 39's time was enough for him to grow up and become a person whom many people would look up to for a lifetime. Young Barbarian King had already felt that he was inferior to Yi Xuan. Moreover, his attacks couldn't 39T cause any effect on Yi Xuan. He himself possessed an extremely tyrannical body. It could be said that he used to crush other people, depending upon his body. Therefore, he knew well how troublesome a person with such tyrannical body could be. One finger breaks the world. Young Barbarian King didn't 39T get time to think much. He could only attack Yi Xuan with his finger. He couldn't 39T depend upon other people at this time. These people were as majestic as Yi Xuan had expected. However, all of them were harboring evil intentions. They wanted others to take the initiative. And then they wanted to sit back and enjoy the advantages like a fisherman after Yi Xuan had been killed by them. They didn't 39T attack, even when they saw that the young Barbarian King had been cornered by Yi Xuan. They wanted to kill Yi Xuan. However, they didn't 39T have the strength to save someone from him. It must be said that there were disciples in the 100 Barbarians cave who were willing to die for the young Barbarian King. But they couldn't 39T withstand even a single blow from Yi Xuan. Yi Xuan merely sneered while facing 100 Barbarians' Lu Run fingers, even though it had arrived while splitting the world. He then brandished his big hand. It was Fire Cloud Cave 39's martial technique, the Fire Cloud Cave 39's falling sky hand. It swept towards the 100 Barbarians' Lu Run fingers to grasp it. Bang, a dreadful power originated from the collision and emitted endless rays of light. These rays of light swept out over 1,000 miles, and the space broke down in its entirety. Many people in the surroundings were blown away by this power. They couldn't 39T withstand such terrifying power. Bang, the young Barbarian King went out flying once again. He spouted a mouthful of blood. His eyes were filled with bitter hatred. Such an expression had appeared on his coarse face. So, it was evident that he hated Yi Xuan very much. Are you all going to watch someone die and do nothing to save them? You all will be killed one by this hunter if you don't 39T attack. Your end 139T be better than mine. At that time, young Barbarian King shouted in resentment. Many tyrannical auras were hidden in the crowd that had surrounded Yi Xuan, and nobody among them was weaker than him. However, they didn't 39T attack this time. It seemed as if they wanted to watch from the sidelines. Young Barbarian King has said that all of us will be killed one by this monster if we don't 39T kill him. First, a figure came out of the void. It seemed as if this man 39's steps were setting off ripples as his figure walked in the void. He left imprints of principles while walking. He was very formidable. He was a dreadful person who had already stepped 1 foot into in the Great Sage Realm. Everyone immediately recognized him. He is the top-tier expert of Eastern Region 39's Great Unity Sect, Zhuxiuzhu. The Great Unity Sect was a dreadful force. It was a colossus in the Eastern Region. It was said that the Great Unity Sect was in 39 a native force of the true martial world. They had entered the true martial world in large scale one day, and they had gotten the command over the Eastern Region when the true martial university had declined. Thereupon, they had become one of the Eastern Region 39's super dominant forces, and Zhuxiuzhu was the strongest person among the core disciples of the Great Unity Sect. He had already become famous in the entire true martial world. He also had the accomplishment of escaping unscathed from the hands of a great sage. He was regarded as one of the strongest experts in the half-step Great Sage realm. He was ranked 3rd on the merit list. He was right below the member of the True Martial University 39's Heavenly Punishment faction fan, Yi Chung. Zhuo must be an even bigger pressure for Yi Shiwen as compared to the young barbarian king. He truly deserved to be ranked among the top 3 on the merit list. U39 Re a strong man. However, U39 die here. Unfortunately, Zhuo looked at Yi Shiwen somewhat pitifully and said, "True Martial University has sent 2 formidable men this time. U39 Re 1, and Fan Yi Chung is the other. I39 go to that Fan Yi Chung after I39 VE killed you." The Heavenly Punishment faction had become famous in the true martial world when the True Martial University was ruling the true martial world. So I39 go and see if they still have some standard I39 see if they still deserve this reputation. Zhuo was carrying a faintly visible aura on his body. The Great Unity sect didn't 39T pursue an ordinary martial arts way. Instead, the so-called Great Unity way was an entirely different martial way. Every disciple of the Great Unity sect carried a faintly visible aura. His provocative gaze apparently attempted to infuriate Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen himself didn't 39T have good relations with the law enforcement hall. So, he didn't 39T mind whether the Heavenly Punishment faction deserved its reputation or not. Yi Shiwen sneered, "He 39's gravely mistaken if he thinks that he can infuriate me in this way. Come on if you want to fight. Don 39T try to irritate me by using this method." "It 39's pointless," Yi Shiwen softly replied. "You 39 Re a fine man. But you 39 Re overconfident as well. We can 39T let you succeed in this matter. Otherwise, 139T we all lose." Face a sneer came from the void, and another tall figure came out walking from it. To be continued. Chapter 637. He was a tall man who was dressed like a barbarian. He unexpectedly looked slightly similar to the young barbarian king. He was the most tyrannical expert among the core disciples of the Fire Cloud Cave, Qi Lin. Yi Shiwen had such an impression of him because he was Qi Tian's ancestor. In fact, Qi Tian's tribe had risen to the jurisdiction of several tribes of Fire Cloud Cave because of Qi Lin. Qi Lin had soon become a core disciple of the Fire Cloud Cave since he had risen above the others. In fact, his tribe had obtained many benefits after his emergence. More and more talents had taken birth in his tribe, and a top-tier powerhouse like Qi Tian was born later. However, it's a pity that he hadn't even grown up when he was killed by Yi Shiwen. The aura on Qi Lin's body had to be more overbearing than that on Qi Tian's body. It seemed as if the barbarian god had arrived from the ancient times. He was looking at Yi Shiwen with an ice-cold and hateful look in his eyes. Qi Tian was his most qualified descendant. He looked the most promising to take his position in the future among the core disciples. However, he didn't get time to support him further since he died at Yi Ziwen's hands. It was like someone had cut off the hope of their entire tribe's growth. He had supported his tribe by himself until now, and already brought it to the peak. And then, a successor like Qi Tian had appeared with great difficulties. However, he was killed by Yi Shiwen. So, how wouldn't this man harbor immense hatred for Yi Shiwen? I think killing Yi Shiwen will prove my assassination path. The more tyrannical my kill, the more I'll prove my existence. The void distorted, and a figure appeared from inside it. This figure wore a cloak. He was slightly thin. Nobody could see how he looked and how tall he was. They just saw an eye-catching sickle in his hand. This sickle looked like it belonged to the god of death, Tianya's wind chaser. Someone recognized this man. This man was the core disciple of Tianya Group. This group was the biggest group of assassins in the true martial world. They could be found throughout the entire true martial world. The branches of the Tianya were also situated in the Great Yu State in the past. Jinglei had also been its disciple. He had set off a reign of terror in the Great Yu State once. But it wasn't clear how many experts had been killed by him. However, he had caused panic in the entire Great Yu State. He was just a disciple of the legendary realm, and it wasn't clear how much stronger this wind chaser was than Jinglei. As per the legends, this man had once audaciously gone to assassinate a great sage. He hadn't succeeded. However, he had escaped successfully. He had become famous after that fight, and had shaken the entire true martial world. He had soon become the top-notch expert among the core disciples of Tianya Group. The assassins of Tianya Group used to walk on a different path than the usual path of martial arts. They used to walk on the path of assassination. The result of cultivating quietly would be far inferior to the result produced through killing, especially on the path of assassination. The stronger the expert one would kill, the more breakthroughs they would make. Wind Chaser might have already become a terrifying great sage assassin if he had succeeded in killing that great sage. Moreover, Wind Chaser was obviously the code name. Nobody would use their real name in the Tianya Group. In fact, there was no need to use real names either. Therefore, only code names remained. Another youth arrived after Wind Chaser. He was dressed in white clothes. People recognized him as soon as he arrived. This man was Xiang Baiyu. He was the top core disciple of Northern Region's No-Hate Temple. He looked as gentle as jade, like a person carved with jade. He was also an invincible expert among the core disciples of the Northern Region. He justified the so-called saying those with body like Bodhi are so high and aloof that it's difficult to reach them. Nobody among these four individuals was below the young barbarian king. In fact, they were slightly above him. They were a group of most powerful people under the Great Sage realm. The arrival of any of these individuals was enough to shake several experts. But so many people had surrounded Yi Shiwen in order to kill him. On the other side, the young barbarian king had taken the advantage of this time, and more than half of his injuries had healed. His complexion had turned extremely ugly. All these people were his rivals on ordinary days. So, they were well aware of each other. In fact, it wasn't clear how many times they had fought secretly while representing their respective forces. But he was in such a difficult situation in front of them at this time. How wouldn't he hate this? He hated these people in addition to the man who had humiliated him, Yi Shiwen. However, these people didn't know this. Otherwise, they might have killed the young barbarian king first. However, their visions were firmly fixed on only one individual now, Yi Shiwen. They were well aware of each other. After all, they had been rivals for more than 100 years. Therefore, they had maintained a balance between each other. They may have across stronger or weaker opponents amongst themselves. However, it wasn't that they couldn't handle the ones who were a bit stronger. However, Yi Shiwen had already surpassed the bottom line that they could take. The so-called sayings, the shot hits the bird that pokes its head out, and big trees that rise above the forest are always destroyed by the wind makes sense. How would Yi Shiwen not know this truth? However, he didn't care about it. After all, big trees would be rooted more firmly and grow even healthier and stronger only if they faced the storms. They were intending to eradicate him since he had stood out among others. Then, why wouldn't he think of using these people as his stepping stones? Yi Shiwen, say whatever you want to say now. After all, this is the time of your death. Nobody can save you now. The young barbarian king wildly laughed. He had become confident that Yi Shiwen would die this time. You'll definitely die this time. This thing was bound to happen from the time when Chi Tian had died at your hands. I must tear you into pieces and avenge him. Qi Lin looked at Yi Shiwen with his ice-cold eyes. A person like you shouldn't be allowed to live. Xiang Baiyu of Northern Regions, No-Hate Temple softly said. He meant that Yi Shiwen had destroyed the balance of power. So, everyone had tacitly approved that such a character mustn't be allowed to go on. My sickle is getting impatient for your blood. Fu-fu, Wind Chaser coldly said. All of you come together. There's no need to look for any excuses. Not a single person among all of you should think of escaping. Yi Shiwen took a deep breath. His expression immediately turned incomparably serious. His vitality began to surge. After all, these few people had imposed a huge pressure on him. So, it wasn't like earlier. His golden divinities emerged out. They formed golden waves and swept out swirling in the air. Yi Ziwen's tone was dull. However, everyone felt as if they had fallen down into an ice cave. It seemed as if he was pronouncing their death penalties. Many experts who had surrounded him felt a chill inside at this time. Their eyes were brimming with killing intention as they looked at him. We can't let him live. Otherwise, all of us will die. Even Zhuo Xiu's complexion had turned exceptionally solemn. They didn't believe that Yi Shiwen could kill all of them by himself. However, it was easily possible that a few of them might serve as sacrificial victims. After all, how wouldn't they be aware how Shou Kuan and Aguda had died, and how young barbarian king had been forced into a difficult situation a moment ago? Therefore, they didn't take Yi Zaiwen's words lightly. Yi Shiwen is extremely dangerous. He's only in the sage accomplished realm, and possesses such a terrifying strength. So, he'll grow up to an extremely dreadful extent if it continues like this. Such an unconventional person mustn't live. Die! It wasn't clear who had shouted, but the entire world was flooded with the war cries. Yi Shiwen immediately felt as if a burst of fierce wind had hit his face. The murderous aura appeared suddenly. Whoosh! Suddenly, a black light arrived in front of Yi Shiwen, and it was none other than that grim reaper's sickle that charged swiftly towards his throat. It had already arrived in front of Yi Shiwen to kill him in this crucial moment. Its speed was beyond everyone's imagination. It was Wind Chaser. His assassination technique had already become profound to an incredible extent. His speed was incomparably fast. He had arrived in front of Yi Shiwen in an instant. It seemed as if Yi Shiwen didn't get enough time to react while facing Wind Chaser's killer blow, and it had already arrived near his neck. Everyone held their breath. Is Yi Shiwen going to die at Wind Chaser's hands? Wind Chaser apparently also felt that Yi Shiwen would soon die. Therefore, he couldn't help but let out a complacent laughter. Foo-foo, I want your head. Really? It's too early to be proud of yourself. Yi Shiwen coldly snorted. Then his body burst out endless golden light. The sword in tension condensed in his hand, and then swept out. The sword in tension exploded above that grim reaper's sickle when only a fraction of time was left. Bang! Wind Chaser was blown away by Yi Shiwen. He went out flying just like a stringless kite. He didn't possess incredible physique. Therefore, he was blown away while facing Yi Shiwen, who was like a tyrannosaurus in the form of a human. I knew it! Blood dripped out from the corner of Wind Chaser's mouth. However, his face exposed an even more sinister look. You're powerful enough. You're a worthy prey. So, it seems that I don't need to go and kill a great sage. I can also prove my path by killing you. Is that so? However, it seems to me that you deserve only to become a ghost under my sword. Yi Shiwen sneered. He brandished the long sword that was in his hand and was about to rush over. The other 4 individuals, including other experts present in the surroundings, charged at this time. The other experts didn't have as dreadful strength as these 5 individuals. However, they didn't hold back their attacks on Yi Shiwen at this time. They couldn't let Yi Shiwen land a killer blow on Wind Chaser. Otherwise, it would be their turn next. A fiery big hand suddenly swept down from the sky. It was Fire Cloud's falling sky hand. It wasn't clear for how many years Qi Lin had cultivated the Fire Cloud's falling sky hand. He had already brought it to perfection. It seemed as if the void would collapse as it swept down. It seemed as if one palm would destroy 10,000 worlds. He himself seemed to have transformed into an ancient barbarian god. He seemed all set to rule the entire world. Yi Shiwen attacked with his longsword. The cold sword light divided into 19 sword lights. They ripped apart the world and collided with that big hand in an instant. Bang! Endless rays of light emitted out and gave rise to fluctuations. The sky distorted and crashed down like a magnificent sea with a loud bang. It seemed as if the entire world had collapsed. That big hand was chopped off into several fragments by the sword light in the sky. It exploded in the sky and opened a huge crack in the sky. The chaos leaked out. Qi Lin felt as if a tremendous power had transmitted to his hand. He had no choice but to retreat several steps in order to get away from this tremendous power. He was incomparably horrified in his heart. My arm would have gotten crushed if my body hadn't been a barbarian god's real body. Yi Zaiwen's sword light is extremely dreadful. To be continued. Chapter 638. How has Yi Zaiwen's body become so intrepid? The battle was still going on frantically. Yi Shiwen had repelled Qi Lin in a flash. However, Zuoxiu Zhu had already charged towards him. His sword lights were world-shaking. They weren't inferior to the sword lights that Yi Shiwen had produced a moment ago. A sword cut open the world and smashed down. Zuoxiu Zhu's cultivation was topmost among all these individuals. It was enough to pose a threat to Yi Shiwen. After all, Yi Shiwen hadn't entered the great sage realm yet. He forced Yi Shiwen to give up the idea of chasing Qi Lin. Yi Shiwen couldn't help but get slightly anxious while facing Zuoxiu Zhu's attack. He had the assurance that he could blow up any of these 5 individuals in a one-on-one battle. However, he unfortunately seemed to be trapped in a net under the combined attack of these 5 people. The combined attack of these 5 men had imposed an even bigger pressure on Yi Shiwen as compared to a moment ago when he was surrounded by densely packed enemies. Those 5 men were attacking in turns. Therefore, they didn't have any hesitation. Moreover, all of them had some mutual understanding. There wasn't a huge mutual understanding between them. However, it was much better as compared to earlier, when Yi Shiwen had been dealing with a big crowd of experts. Zuoxiu Zhu's sword lights contained a kind of indistinct main dao. This was a kind of might sword dao. It was an unconventional sword technique. So, one could well imagine how ferocious it must be since it had given birth to sword dao. The sword lights blotted out the sky and covered the earth as they smashed down and shrouded Yi Shiwen. It seemed as if they would definitely kill him and turn him into fragments. Yi Shiwen promptly shot his big hand. He grabbed those endless sword lights with his fire clouds falling sky hand. Those sword lights crazily entangled on top of Yi Zaiwen's big hand. It seemed as if they would explode his big hand, just like he had exploded Qi Lin's fire clouds falling sky hand a moment ago. However, how could Yi Shiwen be so ordinary? He coldly snorted, and his entire divinities frantically rushed to his arm. Then, those frantically revolving sword lights were suppressed by the boundless divinities in a split second. His sword smashed down. It seemed as if it would chop off the horizon. However, it looked so childish in front of Yi Zaiwen's fire clouds falling sky hand. On the other side, Qi Lin's complexion had turned exceptionally ugly. Their fire cloud cave's martial technique had displayed such might in Yi Zaiwen's hands. It was obvious that it was a matter of extraordinary shame and humiliation for him. He could see that Yi Zaiwen's fire cloud's falling sky hand was more ferocious than his own. He couldn't imagine how Yi Shiwen might have cultivated the fire cloud's falling sky hand to such a level. The fire cloud's falling sky hand was widespread. However, it had some restrictions in practicing. Different level of people could learn different levels of fire clouds falling sky hand. Even he hadn't obtained a complete version of it. However, Yi Zaiwen's fire clouds falling sky hand looked superior to his. How is it possible? Is this a dream? Starburst! Yi Shiwen shouted. He shot a punch, and it transformed into a star and burst out. Stars exploded everywhere, and the mighty star power swept out towards Zuoxiu Zhu. Zuoxiu Zhu had no choice but to retreat in order to avoid this dreadful star power. He even used the endless sword lights to protect himself. Bang! A violent sound of breaking of space resounded. Xiang Baiyu and young barbarian king had already arrived behind Yi Shiwen. They had arrived by taking advantage of the time when Zuoxiu Zhu had obstructed Yi Shiwen. The attacks of both men had been brewing long ago. After all, the continuous attacks of the other 3 men hadn't given them the opportunity to attack earlier. However, their attacks directly rushed towards the vital point of Yi Zaiwen's body at this time, and it seemed as if this would kill him and finish the task. Bang! The attacks of both men suddenly arrived near Yi Zaiwen's body. However, Yi Zaiwen's body emitted scarlet rays of light and formed a scarlet barrier. Those 2 dreadful forces had arrived near his body, but they eventually banged on top of that scarlet barrier and gave rise to ripples. However, they couldn't break the barrier. What? A damaged great sage tool? A terrified look flashed in the eyes of both men. It was obvious that they had gotten the hint of a damaged Great Sage tool from this barrier. It wasn't a complete Great Sage tool. However, it could pose a huge threat to them, even if it was a damaged one. They possessed tyrannical strength. However, they didn't have as profound heritage as Shokuin had. A damaged Great Sage tool was something which they couldn't obtain. However, they didn't know that Yi Zaiwen's Heavenly Source Mirror wasn't a damaged Great Sage tool. Instead, it was a Sage tool, which was just half step away from evolving into a Great Sage tool. Bang! Yi Shiwen took advantage of their shock and shot a fist without fooling around. The surroundings transformed into a starry sky. His fist condensed into a star river and instantly exploded after it slammed into young Barbarian King's body. The young Barbarian King screamed and went out flying. Endless star power frantically exploded inside his body. His body was the Barbarian God's real body, but he didn't have any choice while facing such tyrannical and crazy power. It wasn't clear how many bones were broken in his entire body. He would have been torn into pieces by now if he didn't possess the legendary Barbarian God's real body. Countless people in the surroundings were left dumbstruck as they saw this scene. They hadn't expected that Yi Shiwen would show the vigor of a dragon and the ferocity of a tiger even in this 5-on-1 situation. The attacks of these 5 men had posed a threat for him. However, it had only posed a threat for him, nothing more. The young Barbarian King was blown away for the 3rd time. He would have been blown up if he didn't possess the Barbarian God's real body. Is there no one under the Great Sage realm who can contend against him? This thought emerged in the minds of countless people. Humph! A cold snort came from the sky. Then, a sword appeared in Zuoxiao Zhu's hand. The murderous aura overflowed the entire place. And endless sword lights soared straight towards Yi Shiwen. We can't attack separately now. Otherwise, he'll defeat every attack. He's extremely formidable. Qi Lin shouted. His heart was also filled with agony. An invincible and super confident person like him had acknowledged that someone was much more powerful than him, that he wasn't a match for this person. How difficult this must have been for him. Join hands? Do you think that'll give you a chance? Yi Shiwen sneered. The pair of golden wings unfolded behind him. Then, the golden divinities crawled over his entire body. He looked like a god of war casted from gold from afar. He moved. Only the golden shadow was left at his spot. He charged towards the young Barbarian King. Yi Shiwen obviously knew the so-called saying it's better to weed out the weakest first. Young Barbarian King had sustained most serious injuries among these people, so it was easiest to kill him. His hand stretched out, and it transformed into a very big hand. Zuoxiao Zhu's sword lights were grabbed and extinguished within an instant. Zuoxiao Zhu's sword lights were exploded therein no matter what. Other people had also figured out Yi Zaiwen's objective by this time, so they attacked one after another to kill him. After all, they couldn't let him succeed in his objective. However, the scarlet barrier formed on Yi Zaiwen's body once again, and their attacks couldn't cut open his scarlet barrier no matter what. The contest between the two sides was taking place at a great speed. It wasn't clear for how long this fight would continue if he let the young Barbarian King escape. The contest would be full of uncertainties in that case. Stop him. We can't let him succeed. Those 4 men attacked at this time. Moreover, even those supporting experts on the sidelines attacked one after another. After all, they weren't fools either. How could they not see Yi Zaiwen's objective? And they couldn't let him succeed since they had figured it out. However, their speed was extremely slow. The golden light blotted out the sky and covered the earth as it arrived. Yi Zaiwen's speed was extremely quick, and he dodged these attacks at a lightning speed after unfolding the devil wings. It took long to mention all these things. However, everything had happened in an instant. Yi Shiwen had already arrived near the young Barbarian King in an instant. The sword intention transformed into a lightning bolt in the sky and smashed down. Pucci! The young Barbarian King screamed. He had already been cut into 2 halves on the spot. He struggled to mend his body. However, Yi Shiwen obviously wasn't going to give him such an opportunity. The Big Bang Stardust fist smashed down, and a galaxy with inexhaustible brilliance exploded therein. Bang! Young Barbarian King's soul got extinguished in an instant. Then, his formidable vitality got absorbed by the heavenly source mirror. Yi Shiwen felt that the heavenly source mirror had become stronger. In fact, it had reached even closer to evolving into a great sage tool after it had absorbed young Barbarian King's entire vitality. However, he thought about it once again. Young Barbarian King himself was just one step away from entering the great sage realm. And it wasn't clear how many times more tyrannical he was than an ordinary expert of half-step great sage realm. His physique wasn't as good as Yi Zaiwen's entire body. However, it was still top-notch. It was enough to crush the demon beasts of the same level barehanded. A top-notch Heaven's Pride expert has fallen. Countless people began to boil. Young Barbarian King's name was erased from the merit list. It was equal to declaring his death. Everyone had already acknowledged Yi Zaiwen's strength. He had the strength to explode any person in a one-on-one battle. However, he had managed to kill young Barbarian King even in a 5-on-1 contest. Was this the end of the world? It's pointless. You'll certainly die today. Zuoxiao Zhu shouted as sword energies burst out from each pore of his body. These sword energies reorganized in the sky and formed a huge sword array. This sword array immediately formed a world of swords and overwhelmingly smashed down upon Yi Shiwen. It wasn't clear how many times more tyrannical Zuoxiao Zhu's cultivation of sword method was than that of Yi Shiwen. He was a real sword cultivator. Yi Shiwen had extremely high understanding of the sword way. However, he merely used to do it in his spare time. Buried Heaven's Sword, Yi Shiwen shouted. The sword intention condensed into a long sword in his hand and suddenly swept out. It rose in the sky whilst facing against the wind, grew up to several hundred feet tall in an instant, and smashed down like lightning. Bang! Buried Heaven's Sword and the entire sword array collided in the sky. The collision spread out the sword energies in all directions, and the traces of sword energies pierced the vast sky. However, the momentum of Yi Zaiwen's buried Heaven's Sword didn't decrease. It had already arrived in front of Zuoxiao Zhu in a flash, whilst destroying the sword array all the way. Poochie! Blood splashed out. To be continued. Chapter 639. Blood splashed out, and an arm went out flying in the sky. Zuoxiao Zhu groaned in depression. His complexion had turned deathly pale. His arm had been chopped off and sent off flying. Blood was unceasingly flowing out from his wound. The sword energies that Yi Shiwen had left in his body had made the blood gush out unceasingly. He didn't even get enough time to expel the sword energies that had been left behind by Yi Shiwen. It was difficult for him to conceal the terrified look in his eyes. He hadn't expected that the outcome would be like this when only young Barbarian King was missing. They had suppressed Yi Shiwen when they had been 5 individuals. Therefore, Yi Shiwen hadn't been able to concentrate on killing one individual among all of them. However, Yi Shiwen had broken these restrictions like a ferocious dragon with only one person gone. How can this be possible? Everyone looked incredulously at Zuoxiao Zhu and Yi Shiwen, no matter whether it was Wind Chaser, Xiang Baiyu, or Qi Lin. They reckoned that Zuoxiao Zhu would have been killed by Yi Shiwen if he hadn't dodged the attack just now in advance. How could he be so formidable? It was simply hard to imagine. This went far beyond their expectations. Run, quickly run. We aren't a match for him. Wind Chaser promptly said. He was an assassin, so he would escape thousands of miles in shame if he couldn't kill a target. This was his nature. He wouldn't consider direct battles and so on. One should escape from an unfavorable situation. This was his normal thinking. No, we can't escape like this. Each one of us will be killed by him if we try to escape. Do you think he'll let us go? This monster will certainly take revenge. We've encircled him in order to kill him. So, he won't leave us in any case. Qi Lin shouted loudly. Everyone's alarmed mind suddenly cooled down. They then thought for a while, it's really so. Even we wouldn't have left him if we had been in his place. After all, It wasn't that they didn't know the principle of rooting out the source of trouble. They might be able to kill Yi Shiwen and get a way out only by fighting with their entire strength now. It wasn't clear when, but they had vowed in the beginning. They had been full of confidence that they could kill Yi Shiwen. However, only the thought of running away was left in their minds now. What kind of sorrowful situation was this? Their determination of killing Yi Shiwen had already died out, especially Zhuo Xiuju's. He was definitely the most tyrannical person among them. However, his arm had already been chopped off by Yi Shiwen now. In fact, he might have been cut into two halves on the spot if he hadn't dodged in time. Yi Shiwen has brought that woman too. So, we can give him some worries by capturing her. Someone among the experts who had surrounded Yi Shiwen shouted at this time. Consequently, everyone's vision commutatively fell on Ling Fei. She was present on the other side. Everyone believed that it would be very easy to handle Ling Fei since she looked delicate and weak. Moreover, Yi Shiwen had brought her. Quite many people had seen this. Therefore, they believed that they could compel Yi Shiwen to submit as long as they captured her. They could have a way out of this difficult situation at that time. That man's voice had just fallen when a few assassins appeared in the surrounding while everyone was in a dilemma whether they should do this or not. All of them were the assassins of Tinya Group. They then rushed towards Ling Fei to capture her. Other people might have apprehensions. However, these assassins didn't have such apprehensions. A mission would be complete as long as they could kill the enemy. There wasn't any other way for them. Taking a hostage may not have been a just and upright method in the opinion of the majority. However, nothing was off limits for them. Those four experts of the Tinya Group had already arrived in front of Ling Fei in a moment. Her weak and delicate body slightly shivered. It seemed as if she was scared. Those experts' faces also exposed a victorious grin. We can at least prevent Yi Shiwen from attacking as long as we capture this woman. So, this is the best way. Qi Lin and a few other people were already prepared to block Yi Shiwen. They would block Yi Shiwen if he tried to save her. However, who would have imagined that Yi Shiwen would directly rush towards Zhuo Xiuju to kill him? It seemed as if Ling Fei's life or death simply didn't affect him. A few people were astonished to find that Yi Shiwen was so cold-blooded that he had just ignored this. Our goal behind taking her hostage won't be achieved if Yi Shiwen doesn't care. Won't it be wasted effort? However, they soon saw a scene which they wouldn't forget for their entire lives. Those four assassins who had launched a surprise attack on Ling Fei had already arrived in front of her. However, that young girl who appeared to be trembling with fear shot out her slender palm. That thin white palm smashed down. It seemed quite slow to everyone, and they could see its trajectory. However, it exploded in an instant after the preemptive strike. Bang! An assassin of Tinya Group could only watch the thin, white palm helplessly as it got closer and closer, and a slap finally struck his body. That expert of Tinya Group was immediately blown up in the sky, and blood splashed out. He didn't have the power to fight back. It seemed as if an ant had been smashed to death without any difficulty. Everyone was left dumbstruck as they saw this scene. It seemed as if they had seen a ghost. Those four assassins of the Tinya Group weren't as formidable as Wind Chaser. However, they were also dreadful experts of the late stage of half-step Great Sage realm. They could even assassinate a Great Sage if the latter one didn't pay attention. In fact, even a person of Qi Lin's level was also somewhat afraid of these assassins. One of them was smashed into the sky by a slap now. How much terrifying power did this weak-looking body contain? How is it possible? She had looked afraid a moment ago. More people reacted soon after that. They were stunned as they saw this scene before their eyes. Only Yi Shiwen knew that Ling Fei's body hadn't shivered because she was afraid. Instead, it was because she was excited. Ling Fei was already in the Great Sage realm. However, Yi Shiwen could clearly see that she had very less fighting experience. It might be because of her noble status. She didn't have too much fighting experience, and a very few people would dare to attack her. Therefore, she would get very excited whenever she would come across such an opportunity to fight. Everyone finally understood why Yi Shiwen had ignored that move a moment ago. He wasn't being cold-blooded back then. Instead, he knew that this little devil was far more ferocious than him. These people didn't have the power to pose any threat to her. These people thought that they had chosen a weakling to bully. However, they had chosen a supergiant iron wall to kick instead. Everyone was a bit dumbfounded. Withdraw quickly. Those remaining experts of Tinya Group began to escape without making any delay after they realized that they had made a mistake. After all, they would escape thousands of miles in shame if they couldn't kill the target. Freeze for this young lady. Those remaining 3 experts of the Tinya Group were restricted inside the void under Ling Fei's sharp voice. In fact, her voice had seemed like the sound of a silver bell. It seemed as if they were suddenly bounded by some dreadful power. All of you are villains. Ling Fei snorted lightly. Then, a gray scepter appeared in her hand. It was as tall as a person. There was an image of a gray angel at the top of the scepter, and it was emitting incredible rays of light. That grayish angel moved and brandished the sword in its hand. It was just a small sword in the image, but it emitted endless sword beams. Those remaining 3 assassins of Tinya Group were immediately chopped off by the chaotic sword. Everyone was terrified to see this scene. The experts of late stage of half-step Great Sage Realm appeared as weak as ants in front of this delicate young girl. They simply didn't have the power to fight back. However, everyone's attention immediately went back towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen hadn't stopped when everyone was left in shock by Ling Fei's dreadful strength. On the contrary, he had rushed directly towards Xiaozhu. He believed that he didn't need to worry about Ling Fei. She looked weak and delicate. However, she was an exceptionally ferocious person whom he couldn't match even if he summoned the Star Colossus avatar. Therefore, how could he let go of such an opportunity? He unfolded his devil wings and arrived in front of Xiaozhu. He was looking ruthless. It's better to break 1 finger rather than injuring 10 fingers. It'll break all shackles after I've killed Xiaozhu. It'll be impossible for the remaining 3 to bind me after this. Clang! Sword light illuminated half of the sky. Xiaozhu's pale complexion was clearly visible under the radiance. He suddenly clenched his teeth and shouted, "I may die, but it'll make you share the same fate." Suddenly, endless red rays of light emitted from Xiaozhu's body. This was a secret technique of his sect. His strength would rise frantically within a short time on using it. However, his cultivation realm would drop by 1 level as a cost of using it. The price was too huge, so he wasn't ready to use it until the most dangerous time. However, how strong and experienced Yi Zaiwen's eyesight was. He had found out his intentions in an instant. How could he let his enemy succeed? His iron sword shook the world. It transformed into incredible sword power and cut open the world. "Don't!" Qi Lin screamed. He could have stopped Yi Shiwen at that place. However, he had misjudged. How could Yi Shiwen not notice this? This stunning change had happened within a snap of the fingers. Puchi, Xiaozhu didn't get enough time to resist. His body was penetrated by the sword power, and his soul was broken down. His entire blood essence had been absorbed by the heavenly source mirror. Whoosh! A divine beam swept out from the sky and rushed towards Yi Shiwen. Wind Chaser had already arrived near him in a stealthy manner. "Humph! Let's see who can save you this time." Yi Shiwen sneered. He then clenched his fist without any fear and shot a punch. Yi Zaiwen's fist power was matchless. That mighty divine beam that had been approaching him broke down under his fist pressure. However, his fist momentum didn't reduce. It slammed into the void and broke down the space. Consequently, Wind Chaser had no choice but to leap out from the subspace. He had forced out without making any delay. He could be regarded as a model assassin. However, Yi Shiwen obviously wasn't going to let him escape this time. His sword cut open the world and pierced the vast sky. He followed along with the sword and arrived in front of Wind Chaser. He was immensely proud of his speed. However, it looked nothing in front of Yi Zaiwen's speed. Bang! Wind Chaser was sliced in the sky and got transformed into a mass of blood fog. To be continued. Chapter 640. The remaining two individuals finally lost their heads after Zhuxiuzhu and Wind Chaser got killed in succession. They panicked at this time because they had obviously become Yi Zaiwen's next target after the death of those two men. 5 individuals couldn't deal with him together, let alone the 2 who were left. Yi Zaiwen's vitality was getting more and more exuberant. The more enemies he killed, the more tyrannical he would become. He had obtained many profits in this fight. He could properly undergo closed-door training after returning, and he would be completely changed when he would come out of the closed-door training. Yi Shiwen could even dare to fight a great sage at that time by coordinating with the Heavenly Source Mirror. After all, the Heavenly Source Mirror would have become a great sage tool by then. Moreover, it would be his real body that would fight a great sage, not the Star Colossus avatar. So, this was essentially different. Anyway, he must quickly settle these enemies who were present before him. And then the transformation would take place. Both men had been scared out of their wits by Yi Shiwen. 3 out of 5 men had already been killed by him. What could the remaining 2 possibly achieve? Qi Lin didn't speak big words like he had in the past. After all, wouldn't it be a big joke if he had said that they would encircle and kill Yi Shiwen? In fact, it would be pretty good if they didn't get slaughtered by him at this time. Run! Qi Lin couldn't endure anymore. He transformed into a streamer of light and was about to fly out into the void. Xiang Baiyu was beside him. His movement wasn't any slower. He also transformed into a streamer of light and flew out. Fire clouds, falling sky hand. Yi Shiwen shouted. Then a big hand suddenly stretched out and smashed down upon those 2 men who were escaping. Bang! Bang! Both men crashed into the ground like meteors. Yi Shiwen didn't hesitate any further. He stepped over and arrived near Qi Lin. His injuries didn't look that serious as compared to that of Xiang Baiyu. Barbarian God's real body wasn't as strong as Yi Zaiwen's tyrant body. However, it was much stronger than that of Xiang Baiyu. Therefore, the attack just now hadn't injured him fundamentally. Qi Lin was about to climb out of the huge crater. He himself had opened this crater after he had smashed into the ground. However, Yi Shiwen had already arrived in front of him. He attacked with the Big Bang Stardust Fist, and the surroundings transformed into a starry universe. A big and burning star among the endless stars rushed towards Qi Lin. Fire clouds, falling sky hand. Qi Lin shouted, and a big hand stretched out. It seemed as if it would definitely grab that big star. Bang! Qi Lin's palm was exploded, and blood splashed out. He couldn't block Yi Zaiwen's power. Bang! The fist momentum was unimpeded, and immediately exploded on Qi Lin's body. He was killed on the spot, and his soul was entirely extinguished. His entire blood essence was absorbed by the Heavenly Source Mirror. The Heavenly Source Mirror was also transforming at a faster speed inside Yi Zaiwen's body. In fact, it had already reached on the verge of a critical point. It only differed by 1 chance from making a breakthrough into the Great Sage realm and completing the transformation. Xiang Baiyu had also climbed out of the crater on the other side. He became scared to death when he saw this scene. 5 men had arrived to kill Yi Shiwen in the beginning, but only he was left now. Yi Zaiwen's black clothes were fluttering in the cold wind at a distant place. It wasn't clear how, but he looked like an ancient devil god which made everyone terrified. Opportunity! Yi Shiwen turned towards Xiang Baiyu. His eyes immediately shone. Opportunity! An opportunity is right in front of me. He stepped over. He covered the endless void and finally arrived in front of Xiang Baiyu. A big hand stretched out. It then transformed into the fire clouds, falling sky hand, and smashed down. Bang! A top-tier Heaven's Pride expert of the late stage of half-step Great Sage realm fell on the spot. His entire blood essence was absorbed by the Heavenly Source Mirror. A boundless and mighty scarlet aura finally burst out from Yi Zaiwen's body with a loud bang. Ha ha! An unrestrained laughter came from inside Yi Zaiwen's body, and Yi Mo appeared. He rose in the wind while being dressed like a scholar. His imposing aura was getting stronger and stronger. He made the breakthrough and became a great sage tool from a sage tool. His pair of very red eyes looked incomparably savage. He looked like a devil. Yes, he himself was a devil. He could become the devil lord of a generation if Yi Shiwen hadn't unexpectedly tamed him. He could have become a fierce devil god. He was a tool spirit. However, he wasn't an ordinary tool spirit. Instead, he was a tool spirit of the divine tool possessed by a legendary devil king. Ha ha ha! I finally made the breakthrough. These were top-tier meals. Yi Mo released his devil characteristics which he had restrained so far after he had become a great sage tool. He still needed some time to harness this power. This and the breakthroughs made by martial arts experts were different methods leading to same result. Yi Shiwen sneered. He didn't stop Yi Mo from going all out. These people had encircled me in order to kill me. They had been harboring evil intentions. Yi Mo might not have attacked. However, I must have attacked. I can't let my mortal enemies live. These people were elites among every force. Killing all of them was like establishing extraordinary merit. Yi Shiwen didn't check those points when it came to the merit list. Some rewards were indeed given on the basis of the merit list. However, every big force had secret rewards for killing the elite disciples of the other forces. These several hundred elite disciples of the late stage of half-step Great Sage Realm, who were present on the scene, were more than half of the total number of elite disciples who had participated in this Devil World competition. Moreover, there would be many rewards for killing these 5 top-tier Heaven's Pride experts. Yi Shiwen would find it hard to calculate the exact amount. Moreover, a large group of devil experts were watching from the outside. Yi Shiwen wouldn't mind killing them and changing them into points if they tried anything. Yi Shiwen was still thinking. However, Yi Mo had already moved. A big scarlet hand spread out. It transformed into a huge devil hand. Those several hundred disciples present in the surroundings wanted to escape. However, how could they be a match for Yi Mo after he had already evolved into a great sage tool? Only a great sage could match a great sage tool. These experts were well-known figures in the half-step great sage realm. However, there was a difference of heaven and earth between them and great sage experts. So, how could they be compared with a real great sage? The difference between Sage Realm and Great Sage Realm was indeed as massive as the separation between heaven and earth. One could reach to the heaven after crossing this one step. Some people like Yi Shiwen could become famous in the entire world by just escaping from the hands of a great sage. But it was impossible for someone to contend against a great sage. Yi Shiwen might be able to accomplish it in the future. However, it was impossible for him at present. One could well imagine how big the disparity between Sage Realm and Great Sage Realm was. Yi Mo transformed out a massive devil hand and soared to the vast sky. Those experts of half-step Great Sage Realm were running away in all directions. But they couldn't escape from his hand. All of them were caught by his hand. Bang! 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 These experts were transformed into masses of blood fog one after another, and were entirely absorbed by the heavenly source mirror. These people were merely in the half-step Great Sage Realm, and weren't worth mentioning in comparison to the Great Sage experts. However, even a Great Sage might not be able to escape if several hundred such experts joined hands. However, their morale had already been broken by Yi Shiwen. Therefore, it was impossible for them to join hands. The scarlet rays of light on the heavenly source mirror gradually turned dim. Its aura was somewhat unstable because of recently becoming a great sage tool. However, it had slowly become stable after absorbing so much vitality. Yi Shiwen became ecstatic in his heart. His strength had increased easily and enormously after having assistance from Yi Mo. After all, Yi Mo had just become a great sage tool. He would have the advantage from now on. Moreover, his decision of throwing all his profits into the heavenly source mirror hadn't gone in vain this time. After all, he didn't need to be afraid of the suppressive power of a great sage tool after having the heavenly source mirror in his hands. This hidden card would become even more tyrannical, and his strength would rise even more if the Star Colossus avatar collaborated with the heavenly source mirror. It couldn't be compared with the current state. Top 5 experts are dead. Counting from Aguda, Li Yifeng, and Shou Kun, the top 20 names on the merit list have been almost replaced by him in one stroke. My goodness, he's too terrifying. Anyone among these 5 top-notch experts could be rated as the strongest expert under the Great Sage realm. Still, they couldn't deal with him even after joining hands. Moreover, another several hundred elites of the late stage of half-step Great Sage realm have died at his hands. Who is he? Perhaps the title of the strongest person under the Great Sage realm will belong only to him in the future. The strongest person under the Great Sage realm. Only he deserves this title. Someone said, and other people became silent. Several spectators were quiet. All of them were well-known figures among the core disciples. Shou Kun and other people were particularly well-known figures among each force. They were also known as the strongest individuals under the Great Sage realm. They were the strongest men in the minds of the disciples of every force. However, only Yi Shiwen would dare to use the title of the strongest person from today onwards. Moreover, only he could use this title. After all, who else would dare to challenge the entire world? Dead, dead, all of them are dead. Countless lords repeated this sentence in that microcosm. They saw on the merit list that first the young barbarian king, and then Zhuxiuzhu, Qi Lin, Wind Chaser, and Xiang Baiyu, all 5 top disciples had died miserably one after another, and their names had been removed. Several hundred core disciples had been extinguished in a split second soon after that. They had been massacred. These incredible changes had finally stopped. However, countless lords had gone crazy after watching this scene, especially those lords who had sent people to besiege Yi Shiwen. They originally wanted to deal with him and not let him grow. However, nobody had anticipated that they would never be able to stop Yi Shiwen. On the contrary, he had taken advantage of this opportunity and had annihilated all these disciples in one fell swoop. Thus, they had suffered a disastrous loss. These people were elites among their core disciples. Therefore, losing all of them so suddenly had injured the strength of every big force. They were extremely hurt inside. They couldn't believe the facts. How can such a monster exist in this world? How could someone contend against so many geniuses all alone? It's a miracle. Yi Shiwen is the most talented disciples of my true martial university. True martial university was in jubilation now, whereas other forces were extremely gloomy. To be continued. Chapter 641. Chapter 641. Devil World Competition ends. Every expert of the true martial university was celebrating this time, regardless of the faction they belonged to. After all, they hadn't anticipated that such a miracle could happen. It was an impossible thing for everyone. Anyone else in Yi Zaiwen's place would have already been killed. Even the super ancestors might not have been able to do it. That elusive old fogey of the Hidden Star Peak hasn't returned to the true martial university in over 1,000 years. But I had never thought that he would have such an outstanding disciple. God cares for the Hidden Star Peak. It was Huang Wuji who was invincible in his generation earlier, and this Yi Shiwen has now done something which nobody has ever done. Won't Hidden Star Peak rise to the heaven? Many experts of the true martial university sighed with emotion one after another. The roars of countless heroes came from the surroundings. This microcosm had been specially strengthened, but it seemed as if it would collapse under these roars. Those forces that had besieged Yi Shiwen had suffered a disastrous loss. Their vitality had sustained injuries. They had lost several experts in one fell swoop. It wasn't clear when they would be able to replenish their losses completely. Sunlin, the cave lord of the fire cloud, cave, opened his round eyes. Tears of blood flowed out from them. Qi Lin was his favorite core disciple. He had nurtured him with great care, just like a master passes the cassock and alms bowl to their favorite disciple. However, he had now died. It's this Yi Shiwen again. It's Yi Shiwen again. Qi Tian had died at his hands the last time, and he has killed even Qi Lin now. This Yi Shiwen has become a nemesis of our Fire Cloud Cave. So many Heaven's Pride experts, so many geniuses have died at his hands. Yi Shiwen, It'll be very difficult for you to find a safe place in this world. Countless lords deeply remembered this ant-like person on whom they hadn't paid attention earlier. They hated him to their bones. They wanted to slap him to death and vent the hatred in their hearts. They obviously didn't think that such a situation wouldn't have occurred if they hadn't sent people to kill Yishuin. His corpse would have already become cold long time ago if his strength had been even a bit weaker. They could only think of Yishuin and the fact that he had made them suffer a disastrous loss. Damn you, Yishuin! This battle had caused a sensation. The names of the young barbarian king and the other people got wiped out from the merit list, and this news was spread to all the experts who were present in the devil world. The majority of people knew that such a battle had taken place. They knew that a lunatic had challenged countless experts. Many people hadn't been able to come. However, they had guessed the outcome by looking at the names changing on the merit list. Those countless experts who had besieged Yishuin have died. All of them have died. This is extremely dreadful. Did he really do it? Is he even human? How can he be so dreadful? Gao Lingxiu uttered in a state of shock. She still had that old impression of Yishuin. Yishuin had been able to contend only against the experts of the initial stage of half-step Great Sage Realm when he had appeared in front of me for the first time. However, he has already reached to this extent now. It's simply unbelievable. Even the thought of challenging countless experts of the entire world would be enough to make people insane. In fact, this thought would make anyone's blood bubble up to the brim. But Yishuin has done it. And it's not just what other people think of this feat, but this is enough to make his name glorious and eternal through ages. His name has shaken the true martial world. He has done it. He has pulled it off. The names of those experts have been omitted. He has done it. Our true martial university has recruited an invincible genius this time. Bai Jingwei couldn't believe it. His reaction wasn't any better than that of Gao Lingxiu. It's hard to believe that Yishuin has defeated so many experts. No, not just defeated. He has killed them all. This is countless times more difficult than defeating. Any person who is cultivated to this stage must have suppressed one or two individuals. Therefore, it may not be too difficult to defeat these top experts. However, killing them is too big a challenge. Even I can't dare to say that I can do it. However, Yishuin has done it. Fan Yicheng was beside him. His complexion had turned conflicted. On the one hand, it was hard for him to believe it. On the other hand, he was struggling to decide whether he should feel happy or unhappy. The appearance of such a tyrannical expert was a great event if he looked from the true martial university's point of view. After all, he could take charge of a faction after several hundred years. However, it might not be so for their law enforcement hall since Huang Wuji had already put their law enforcement hall into a difficult situation earlier. Therefore, he didn't know whether he should feel happy or sad at this time. The entire true martial world was shaken for a moment. Yishuin had caused a huge sensation in the true martial world in a flash. He had become famous. Even many great sage experts didn't have such popularity. Yi Mo returned into the heavenly source mirror to recuperate after he had collected those blood essences. Yishuin stood up. He then swept his eyes across the surrounding. The spectators took a step back in quick succession as far and as wide he saw. They didn't dare to look straight into his eyes. Yishuin had given them an extremely profound impression. It's simply impossible for a person to achieve this feat. It was obvious that only a devil god would do such a thing. He is truly ruthless and has formidable strength. He'll kill us if we make him angry. Nobody can stop him. Yishuin didn't say anything. His torch-like vision just fell onto those endless devil experts who were hiding at a distant place. He then shouted, "Aren't the experts of devil race going to enlighten me?" Everyone went in uproar. Is he trying to challenge the devil experts now? He has just finished a fight, and it doesn't seem that he hasn't replenished his real elemental energy. Moreover, fighting in succession like this is clearly not effective. Furthermore, the devil world is the devil experts' home. Those devil experts are native to this place. They are far superior to ordinary human experts. It seemed as if Yishuin could see through the depths of everyone's heart wherever his gaze went. He naturally knew what they had been thinking. However, he didn't care about it. He clearly knew what he was doing. It was easier for him to deal with those elites of devil race than the elites of human race because he had the heavenly source mirror. Therefore, it was much simpler to deal with those elites of devil race than the human experts. The devil experts might have been getting restless earlier. In fact, they had wanted to kill Yi Shiwen at that time. But they wouldn't dare to approach him now, even if they borrowed courage from 10 individuals. And that's because they had seen the recent fight with their own eyes. In fact, a weak devil expert might have been scared to death. It was pointless to struggle against such battle strength, even if they were the experts of the devil race. Yi Shiwen, this is bad. An expert is coming. Yi Mo's voice suddenly appeared in Yi Zaiwen's mind when he was about to rush into the group of devil experts and begin his killing spree. Suddenly, Yi Mo's figure disappeared without a trace. Even his aura also disappeared. It seemed as if he had never been in Yi Zaiwen's body. I hadn't expected that a genius like you would be present in the human race. A large figure came out flying from the sky. He was dressed in a silver robe. He looked traditional and graceful. He was an approximately 30 or 40 years old middle-aged man. He was incomparably handsome. Yi Zaiwen's pupils contracted. This incomparably handsome and harmless-looking middle-aged man had given rise to a bad feeling in his heart. He felt even more terrified than how much he had felt from Feng Ling back then. This man made Yi Shiwen feel suffocated. An ordinary person couldn't feel any dangerous aura on his body. They could only feel the graceful, noble, and calm aura just like that from any other ordinary person. Everyone knew that it was impossible for an ordinary person to arrive in the devil world. Moreover, an ordinary person couldn't fly either. However, Yi Shiwen was getting that terrifying feeling from his body. Oh, have you sensed it? You unexpectedly have sharp intuition. The middle-aged man apparently didn't mind Yi Zaiwen's sensitive and vigilant behavior. He just let out a chuckle and said, "Uncle." Ling Fei's sharp and clear voice came from Yi Zaiwen's behind. Yi Shiwen was stunned by this. "Uncle, this man before me has made me feel terrified. But he is Ling Fei's uncle? You left home without saying a word. Your father is very worried. Hell turned the entire devil world upside down if he can't find you," the middle-aged man said with a smile on his face. He then narrowed his eyes. However, he looked harmless like a pet animal. "Humph, he doesn't care about me." Ling Fei pouted her small mouth. She seemed spiteful. What kind of drama is this? A girl has run away from home, and her family member has arrived looking for her? Isn't it just about going to the human world? They'll take you there on a trip. The middle-aged man let out a smile and shook his head. He looked like an elder who didn't know what to do with a child. "Really?" Ling Fei asked whilst being pleasantly surprised. Then, she looked at Yi Shiwen in a somewhat embarrassed manner. She was obviously weighing and comparing. "Our Fei has troubled you this time," the middle-aged man said to Yi Shiwen with an honest expression. He looked graceful. It was an epitome of courtesy. "What? How have I caused him trouble? In fact, I've helped him a lot," Ling Fei said whilst being dissatisfied. She was obviously quite unhappy with her uncle's statement. Yi Shiwen let out a smile. He had disliked Ling Fei's presence in the beginning. However, he had gradually become habituated to it. In fact, he felt relieved in the closed-door training when Ling Fei would keep watch. After all, he didn't need to worry about other things when she was around. "Well, let's go. Otherwise, your father will send an army to catch you." The middle-aged man laughed and said to Ling Fei. Ling Fei was somewhat unwilling to go. She had never enjoyed such carefree days in her entire life. However, she also knew that she had no other choice but to go since her uncle had arrived. She bit her lower lip and said to Yi Shiwen, "He'll miss you. So, you must also miss me. Otherwise, he'll beat you up." Yi Shiwen didn't know whether to laugh or to cry, and he didn't know what he ought to say. Ling Fei went towards the middle-aged man after she had said this sentence. Then, both the individuals transformed into streamers of light and disappeared into the horizon. The wind blew, and leaves fell down, and the sensational Devil World competition came to an end. To be continued. Every expert of the true martial university was celebrating this time regardless of the faction they belonged to. After all, They had 39T anticipated that such a miracle could happen. It was an impossible thing for everyone. Anyone else in Yi Shiwen 39's place would 39V already been killed. Even the super ancestors might not have been able to do it. Ha ha ha, that elusive old fogey of the hidden star peak hasn't 39T returned to the true Martial University in over 1,000 years. But I had never thought that he would have such an outstanding disciple God cares for the hidden star peak. It was Huang Wuji, who was invincible in his generation earlier, and this Yi Shiwen has now done something which nobody has ever done. 139T Hidden Star Peak rise to the heaven. Many experts of the true Martial University side with emotion, one after another. The roars of countless heroes came from the surroundings. This microcosm had been specially strengthened, but it seemed as if it would collapse under these roars. Those forces that had besieged Yi Shiwen had suffered a disastrous loss. Their vitality had sustained injuries. They had lost several experts in one fell swoop. It wasn't 39T clear when they would be able to replenish their losses completely. Sun Lin, the cave lord of the fire cloud cave, opened his round eyes. Tears of blood flowed out from them. Qi Lin was his favorite core disciple. He had nurtured him with great care, just like a master passes the cassock and alms bowl to their favorite disciple. However, he had now died. At 39S, this Yi Shiwen again. At 39S Yi Shiwen again. Qi Tian had died at his hands the last time, and he has killed even Qi Lin now. This Yi Shiwen has become a nemesis of our fire cloud cave. So many Heaven 39's pride experts, so many geniuses have died at his hands. Yi Shiwen, at 39 it'll be very difficult for you to find a safe place in this world. Countless lords deeply remembered this ant-like person on whom they hadn't 39T paid attention earlier. They hated him to their bones. They wanted to slap him to death and vent the hatred in their hearts. They obviously didn't 39T think that such a situation wouldn't 39T have occurred if they hadn't 39T sent people to kill Yi Shiwen. His corpse would 39V already become cold long time ago if his strength had been even a bit weaker. They could only think of Yi Shiwen and the fact that he had made them suffer a disastrous loss. Damn you, Yi Shiwen, this battle had caused a sensation. The names of the young barbarian king and the other people got wiped out from the merit list, and this news was spread to all the experts who were present in the Devil World. The majority of people knew that such a battle had taken place. They knew that a lunatic had challenged countless experts. Many people hadn't 39T been able to come. However, they had guessed the outcome by looking at the names changing on the merit list. Those countless experts who had besieged Yi Shiwen have died. All of them have died. This is extremely dreadful. Did he really do it? Is he even human? How can he be so dreadful? Gao Ling Xiu uttered in a state of shock. She still had that old impression of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had been able to contend only against the experts of the initial stage of half-step Great Sage Realm when he had appeared in front of me for the first time. However, he has already reached to this extent now. At 39S, simply unbelievable. Even the thought of challenging countless experts of the entire world would be enough to make people insane. In fact, this thought would make anyone 39's blood bubble up to the brim. But Yi Shiwen has done it. And at 39, it's not just what other people think of this feat, but this is enough to make his name glorious and eternal through ages. His name has shaken the true martial world. He has done it. He has pulled it off. The names of those experts have been omitted. He has done it. Our true Martial University has recruited an invincible genius this time. By Jing Wei, couldn't 39T believe it. His reaction wasn't 39T any better than that of Gao Ling Xiu. At 39's hard to believe that Yi Shiwen has defeated so many experts. No, not just defeated, he has killed them all. This is countless times more difficult than defeating any person who has cultivated to this stage. Must 39V had suppressed one or two individuals. Therefore, it may not be too difficult to defeat these top experts. However, killing them is too big a challenge. Even I can 39T dare to say that I can do it. However, Yi Shiwen has done it. Fan Yicheng was beside him. His complexion had turned conflicted. On the one hand, it was hard for him to believe it. On the other hand, he was struggling to decide whether he should feel happy or unhappy. The appearance of such a tyrannical expert was a great event if he looked from the true Marshall University 39 South point of view. After all, he could take charge of a faction after several hundred years. However, it might not be so for their law enforcement hall since Huang Wuji had already put their law enforcement hall into a difficult situation earlier. Therefore, he didn't 39T know whether he should feel happy or sad at this time. The entire true martial world was shaken for a moment. Yi Shiwen had caused a huge sensation in the true martial world in a flash. He had become famous. Even many great sage experts didn't 39T have such popularity. Yi Mo returned into the heavenly source mirror to recuperate after he had collected those blood essences. Yi Shiwen stood up. He then swept his eyes across the surrounding. The spectators took a step back in quick succession as far and as wide he saw. They didn't 39T dare to look straight into his eyes. Yi Shiwen had given them an extremely profound impression. At 39S, simply impossible for a person to achieve this feat. It was obvious that only a devil god would do such a thing. He is truly ruthless and has formidable strength. He 39LL kill us if we make him angry. Nobody can stop him. Yi Shiwen didn't 39T say anything. His torch-like vision just fell onto those endless devil experts who were hiding at a distant place. He then shouted, "Aren't 39T the experts of devil race going to enlighten me?" Everyone went in uproar. Is he trying to challenge the devil experts now? He has just finished a fight. And it doesn't 39T seem that he hasn't 39T replenished his real elemental energy. Moreover, fighting in succession like this is clearly not effective. Furthermore, the devil world is the devil experts' 39 home. Those devil experts are native to this place. They are far superior to ordinary human experts. It seemed as if Yi Shiwen could see through the depths of everyone 39's heart wherever his gaze went. He naturally knew what they had been thinking. However, he didn't 39T care about it. He clearly knew what he was doing. It was easier for him to deal with those elites of devil race than the elites of human race because he had the heavenly source mirror. Therefore, it was much simpler to deal with those elites of devil race than the human experts. The devil experts might have been getting restless earlier. In fact, they had wanted to kill Yi Shiwen at that time. But they wouldn't 39T dare to approach him now, even if they borrowed courage from 10 individuals. And that 39S because they had seen the recent fight with their own eyes. In fact, a weak devil expert might have been scared to death. It was pointless to struggle against such battle strength, even if they were the experts of the devil race. Yi Shiwen, this is bad. An expert is coming. Yi Mo 39's voice suddenly appeared in Yi Shiwen 39's mind when he was about to rush into the group of devil experts and begin his killing spree. Suddenly, Yi Mo 39's figure disappeared without a trace. Even his aura also disappeared. It seemed as if he had never been in Yi Shiwen 39's body. I hadn't 39T expected that a genius like you would be present in the human race. A large figure came out flying from the sky. He was dressed in a silver robe. He looked traditional and graceful. He was an approximately 30 or 40 years old middle-aged man. He was incomparably handsome. Yi Shiwen 39's pupils contracted. This incomparably handsome and harmless-looking middle-aged man had given rise to a bad feeling in his heart. He felt even more terrified than how much he had felt from Feng Ling back then. This man made Yi Shiwen feel suffocated. An ordinary person couldn't 39T feel any dangerous aura on his body. They could only feel the graceful, noble, and calm aura just like that from any other ordinary person. Everyone knew that it was impossible for an ordinary person to arrive in the devil world. Moreover, an ordinary person couldn't 39T fly either. However, Yi Shiwen was getting that terrifying feeling from his body. Oh, have you sensed that you unexpectedly have sharp intuition? The middle-aged man apparently didn't 39T mind Yi Shiwen 39's sensitive and vigilant behavior. He just let out a chuckle and said, "Uncle Ling Fei." 39's sharp and clear voice came from Yi Shiwen 39's behind. Yi Shiwen was stunned by this. "Uncle, this man before me has made me feel terrified. But he is Ling Fei 39's uncle. You left home without saying a word. Your father is very worried. He 39LL turned the entire devil world upside down. If he can 39T find you, the middle-aged man said with a smile on his face. He then narrowed his eyes. However, he looked harmless like a pet animal. Humph, he doesn't 39T care about me, Ling Fei pouted her small mouth. She seemed spiteful. What kind of drama is this? A girl has run away from home, and her family member has arrived looking for her. I said 39T, just about going to the human world. I 39LL, take you there on a trip. The middle-aged man let out a smile and shook his head. He looked like an elder who didn't 39T know what to do with a child. Really? Ling Fei asked whilst being pleasantly surprised. Then, she looked at Yi Shiwen in a somewhat embarrassed manner. She was obviously weighing and comparing. Our Fei has troubled you this time, the middle-aged man said to Yi Shiwen with an honest expression. He looked graceful. It was an epitome of courtesy. What have I caused him trouble? In fact, I 39V helped him a lot, Ling Fei said whilst being dissatisfied. She was obviously quite unhappy with her Uncle 39's statement. Yi Shiwen let out a smile. He had disliked Ling Fei 39's presence in the beginning. However, he had gradually become habituated to it. In fact, he felt relieved in the closed-door training when Ling Fei would keep watch. After all, he didn't 39T need to worry about other things when she was around. Well, let 39S go. Otherwise, your father will send an army to catch you, the middle-aged man laughed and said to Ling Fei. Ling Fei was somewhat unwilling to go. She had never enjoyed such carefree days in her entire life. However, she also knew that she had no other choice but to go since her uncle had arrived. She bit her lower lip and said to Yi Shiwen, I 39LL miss you. So, you must also miss me. Otherwise, I 39LL beat you up. Yi Shiwen didn't 39T know whether to laugh or to cry. And he didn't 39T know what he ought to say. Ling Fei went towards the middle-aged man after she had said this sentence. Then, both the individuals transformed into streamers of light and disappeared into the horizon. The wind blew, and leaves fell down, and the sensational Devil World competition came to an end. To be continued. Chapter 642. The Devil World competition that had continued for several months. But it had also ended perfectly along with the end of this fight that had caused a sensation in the true martial world. The competition had ended. However, countless people were still in shock. Everyone's attention wasn't on the people who were in the top 100 positions on the merit in this Devil World competition. In fact, it wasn't on the top 20 or the top 10 rankers either. Instead, it was on an individual who was placed somewhere among the top 1,000 names. And that individual was Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had caused a huge sensation in the entire true martial world. He had been a slightly famous expert before, but he had become a familiar figure for countless people now. This wasn't because of any other reason, but the fact that he had done something unprecedented. He had done what nobody could dare to do. And this was enough to make him popular. Most importantly, he had succeeded in that. Nobody had been optimistic that he'd pull this off. However, he had done it. Wasn't this enough? He's just too strong. He has unexpectedly killed several hundred experts of the late stage of half-step Great Sage Realm by himself. The title of the strongest person under the Great Sage Realm goes to him. Nobody can be placed on par with him. Yeah, this title only belongs to him from now. Countless people admired Yi Shiwen for the courage that he had shown in this matter. Who could dare to do such a thing apart from him? This was basically an act of following the path of one's own doom. Strongest under the Great Sage Realm? So what if he is? He isn't a Great Sage. So, he'll remain an ant as long as he doesn't become a Great Sage. Yi Shiwen. How hasn't he died? Why is such a person still alive? God doesn't have eyes. Some people admired Yi Shiwen, while some loathed him. These people were the relatives of those experts whom he had killed. After all of them had died in the process of besieging him. Therefore, these people desperately wanted to eat his flesh, drink his blood, peel off his skin, and pull out his muscles. This matter of Yi Shiwen had swept across the entire true martial world like a wave. His name had also spread throughout the true martial world along with this wave. Everyone deeply remembered this man's name. It didn't matter whether the people liked him or disliked him. They had no choice but to admit that this man's future prospect was limitless. The remaining experts also returned to the true martial world one after another after the end of the Devil World competition. Yi Shiwen could clearly feel the many visions that were mixed in the stream of people and were sweeping over his body. Some of them were curious, while some were terrified. This had happened since this time's competition had made Yi Shiwen famous in the entire world. Yi Shiwen had suddenly become a well-known figure. However, their visions didn't stay on his body for a long time. Yi Shiwen had also become a fierce person now. He had already become a scary devil god in everyone's opinion after he had slaughtered several hundred dreadful experts of the late stage of half-step Great Sage Realm. And an ordinary person obviously couldn't dare to provoke such a man. Yi Shiwen returned to the true martial world soon after he had passed through the space that had been established by the true martial university for entering the devil world. Many experts clearly became relaxed one after another after they had returned to the true martial world. They were very scared during this time. They were living on the edge every day in the devil world. Anyone could die anytime and anywhere in the devil world. This had exhausted them both physically and mentally. Moreover, they couldn't absorb the devil energy present in the surroundings with the help of some special method like Yi Shiwen. Real elemental energy was extremely precious for them. They wanted to use it as little as possible. Therefore, many people didn't have surplus real elemental energy that could be used to dispel their weariness. So, they looked somewhat dispirited. However, they had begun to grab huge amounts of spirit energies to replenish in their bodies as soon as they had entered the true martial university. Suddenly, they looked charged up. It didn't seem that it had been them in the recent scene. This man is Yi Shiwen? Several experts on the merit list have died at his hands. It's really a miracle. I had heard his name earlier as well. However, he had been just a newcomer at that time. I hadn't expected that he would grow up to this extent and would do things that even we couldn't do. A few great sage experts who were present in the surroundings discussed spiritedly. They weren't afraid of being heard by Yi Shiwen since they hadn't said anything unpleasant. Yi Shiwen didn't feel anything. It could be said that both the devil world and the true martial world were his home grounds. Therefore, not being able to adapt and whatnot didn't apply to him. Yi Shiwen could clearly feel that these people's attitude towards him had changed. They used to ignore him before he had participated in the Devil World competition. And that's because they used to believe that he was an unimportant nonentity. However, they looked at him with awe and veneration now. It couldn't be compared with their attitude from the past. Younger brother, you've obtained huge fame this time. Bai Jiansong's frank laughter came from afar. He immediately arrived in front of Yi Shiwen whilst treading the rainbow light. Yang Wenjun and Deng Shui Xin were beside him. They had also obtained huge benefits in this Devil World competition. They had already entered the intermediate stage of Sage Realm within such a short time. Their progress couldn't be compared with that of Yi Shiwen. However, moving one step further within such a short time was already a matter of happiness for them. After all, no one could be compared with a monster like Yi Shiwen. He had even dared to challenge the outstanding heroes of the entire world. So, how could an ordinary person be compared to him? Bai Jiansong's complexion turned somewhat complicated as he looked at Yi Shiwen. I hadn't expected that Yi Shiwen would progress so quickly. He had been merely in the half-step legendary realm when I had seen him for the first time. And he has already reached to the sage, accomplished realm within such a short time now. It's really a miracle. And such a person is in our true martial university. So, our hidden star peak will surely rise to the heaven. Yi Shiwen also looked at Bai Jiansong. He hadn't seen him for a long time, and his cultivation had advanced even a step further now. However, he still couldn't see through Bai Jiansong's cultivation. He secretly made an assessment. I reckoned that I wouldn't be able to defeat Bai Jiansong even if I were to summon the Star Colossus avatar. Bai Jiansong has stayed in the late stage of half-step Great Sage Realm for more than 100 years. So, his foundation must be incredibly profound. Therefore, his cultivation hasn't slowed down even after he has made the breakthrough into the great sage realm. All these top heavens pride experts have enormous talent. Our true martial university hasn't celebrated like this for many years. Those people of other forces have been continuously coveting our regime in the southern region. Younger brother has given them a fierce blow this time. He has almost annihilated their entire generation. They've suffered a disastrous loss. Bai Jian Song burst into laughter and said, making other forces consume defeat was also a matter of great pleasure for these disciples of the true martial university. It could be said that Yi Shiwen had killed the entire generation of many forces this time. After all, these weren't inner disciples. They weren't legendary-level disciples either. It wasn't that millions of such disciples would appear again in every 100 years. These experts might be gathered over a period of 1,000 years after passing through severe training and tempering. And all of them had now been killed within such short time. So, it was a huge loss. They must have been immensely hurt. Yi Shiwen and the others didn't stay in the Ying Xian city for a long time. Instead, they returned to the Hidden Star Peak. In the main hall of the Hidden Star Peak, Yi Shiwen, Bai Jian Song, and a few other people were sitting on their respective seats. Xiaoya was present beside Yi Shiwen. She was looking at these three people somewhat timidly. She had grabbed onto the corner of Yi Ziwen's cloth and wasn't letting it go. She was slightly nervous. She had already advanced to the half-step legendary realm. However, her temperament hadn't changed from when Yi Shiwen had seen her for the first time. Her appearance was also the same. Her strength had grown, but it didn't seem from her body that time had passed. In fact, it seemed as if it had frozen. Young brother Yi? This is? Bai Jian Song asked somewhat curiously as he shot a glance at Xiaoya. He saw everything clearly. He said, such fine foundation, such smooth and unclogged meridians. What kind of eyesight did Bai Jian Song possess? He had found out Xiaoya's outstanding innate talents in a glance. Infinite spirit energies, jade-like physique. Yang Wenjun and Deng Shuixian also found out Xiaoya's uniqueness. She's extremely clean like an infant. She isn't contaminated with dust. She has never been polluted by the worldly stuff. The most important thing in cultivation was to have a pure and innocent heart like an infant. The obstructions in any realm were caused to a great extent by the person themselves. However, such obstructions would be quite rare for a person with a heart as clean as that of a child. Moreover, a person with outstanding foundation would be simply a spiritual baby as mentioned in the legends. All three individuals shot a glance at Yi Shiwen one after another. They didn't know from where he had brought this young girl. Yi Shiwen had once spoken about Xiaoya's origin. He also had many doubts regarding her origin. For example, Xiaoya's appearance had never changed. One could maintain their facial features after cultivation. However, it was absolutely impossible to maintain it to such extent. However, these things were secondary to him. I want all three senior brothers and sister to step forth now and help in making Xiaoya enter the Fair Maiden Peak. Yi Shiwen said he had always wanted to do this thing. He himself was still cultivating, so he didn't have extra time to teach Xiaoya. However, it was fortunate that Xiaoya had top innate talent. Otherwise, she might have already abandoned such a teacher. Xiaoya's cultivation was getting higher and higher. So, finding a teacher for her had become an urgent matter. And the Fair Maiden Peak was the most appropriate for her in the true martial university. It only had female disciples. Moreover, it was one of the top 10 inheritances. So, one naturally didn't need to say anything about its background. The Hidden Star Peak had obviously been the best choice at first. However, the Hidden Star's chief used to appear and disappear unpredictably. It wasn't clear where he was, and Huang Wuji was also the same. Moreover, second sister would cultivate endlessly like a madman, and third brother, Bai Jian Song, was carefree and unruly. So, he could become a good friend, but not a good teacher. Lastly, Yang Wengjun and Deng Shuixian also couldn't become good teachers. Moreover, Xiaoya would perhaps overtake them in less than a few years. Therefore, they also weren't appropriate. Bai Jiansong found it to be slightly unfortunate after listening to Yi Zaiwen's explanation. He had never seen such a talented child. However, it was extremely unfortunate that she couldn't enter the Hidden Star Peak. To be continued. Chapter 643. However, he also couldn't do anything. After all, there wasn't a single appropriate teacher for Xiaoya in the entire Hidden Star Peak. To what extent the talented people of the Hidden Star Peak had withered could be clearly seen from this point. Would it have been any difficult to find a suitable teacher for Xiaoya if Hidden Star Peak had been at its peak? It's no problem. Leave this matter to me. Bai Jiansong patted his chest and said, "It'll be an enormous advantage for them if Xiaoya joins their peak. It's already pretty good since we aren't asking them to give large number of gifts as thanks. So, will they still dare to refuse?" The true Martial University used to open its gates in every 100 years. But it wasn't the time for recruiting people yet. However, these things didn't matter. A colossus like the true Martial University would have been a mystery for Yi Shiwen if he had still been in the Yuan school. So, it would have been impossible if he had wanted to make them open the back door for her. He could have only waited obediently for 100 years for the recruitment to start. However, he could even make an idiot enter the true Martial University as per his current cultivation and position, let alone an exceptional genius like Xiaoya. It was impossible to be absolutely selfless. Nobody could even think of being so. For example, the descendants of these true Martial University disciples wouldn't wait for 100 years in order to enter the university. Recruitment in every 100 years was only applicable for other small forces. The problem that looks complex at first doesn't remain any problem after one has reached a certain level. It becomes extremely easy. In fact, it wouldn't be a problem at all. This is like a different level of people thinking about the same problem in different ways. Moreover, the most important thing for a heritage was that they required a steady flow of outstanding disciples inclined towards them. The entire force would only continue to excel if the outstanding disciples kept joining their heritage. Many people might crazily fight over a disciple like Huang Wuji, let alone someone like Xiaoya who had such aptitude. Yi Shiwen vaguely thought, Xiaoya's qualifications must be even above that of Big Brother. The factions would fight over the geniuses whenever the true Martial University would start the recruitment in the past. Ordinary talents would be picked up by them like ants. However, they would fight over those top-notch Heaven's Pride experts. They would fight for each such talent. In fact, some bloody conflicts had also occurred in the past because of this. The true Martial University's elders had formulated a rule to solve this problem. The disciples would have their own choice. On the one hand, it had prevented such bloody battles from taking place any further. On the other hand, they had made a balance between so many inheritances. After all, the inheritances established by the many ancestors would also slowly disappear into the long river of time if all the talents went to only a few inheritances. The result of this rule wasn't extremely good. However, it wasn't without good results. For example, Huang Wuji, Bai Jiansong, and the other people had entered the declined Hidden Star Peak because of this reason. Otherwise, the Hidden Star Peak might have already perished. Yi Shiwen also had no choice but to admire. True Martial University's ancestors truly had foresight. However, many inheritances had still disappeared, and only several ancient books were left. They didn't have any successors to carry on the legacy. This was also a helpless matter. Survival of the fittest is the natural law. Nobody can violate it. Bai Jiansong had said that they must give huge gifts in return if Xiaoya joined the Fair Maiden Peak. And this wasn't an exaggeration. Xiaoya had great speed. Therefore, any Heaven's Pride expert would be insignificant in front of her if she obtained education in all aspects. Yi Shiwen looked at Xiaoya. He and Xiaoya had talked about this matter. He was surprised that she hadn't refused. She had agreed. She had said that she used to only watch him fight bloody battles outside every time and couldn't help him. Therefore, she also wanted to become stronger. Bai Jiansong had said that there shouldn't be any problem in the recruitment of Xiaoya into the Fair Maiden Peak. However, she would only get recruited to the Fair Maiden Peak. But they hadn't discussed yet about what kind of treatment she would receive. The most important thing was to conduct an aptitude test. The candidates usually wouldn't need to go through this test when the true Marshall University would start the recruitment. That's because their qualifications could be figured out just by looking at their cultivations. However, people who would enter from the back door must go through the aptitude test. The better one's qualifications would be, the more nurturing they would receive. They would naturally grow up more quickly. Yishuan took Xiaoye to qualification test stele the next day. This stele was situated outside the Xian city. A person's innate talent could be figured out from the color displayed on the stele. The stele had 7 different colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and purple. Red signified the lowest level, and purple signified the highest. Yi Ziwans hadn't casually chosen a random day for the test. However, more than 100 people had arrived for the test. The number would have increased by several times if it were one of those special days. This was quite normal. After all, the true Marshall University had so many disciples that it was hard to count. There were several millions of them. So, many of them had their descendants also had descendants. Therefore, many people would appear every day for the qualification test as per the requirement. It was just that they didn't have a high-handed reach like Yishuan. Therefore, a person wouldn't be qualified to become a disciple of the true Marshall University if their qualifications lacked by too much. They could at most become disciples on the record. Xiaoye was sure that she would become a member of the true Marshall University. Only her aptitude needed to be tested now. A few disciples of Fair Maiden Peak were waiting here when the people of the Hidden Star Peak arrived. After all, Bai Jiansong had personally requested this. Therefore, Fair Maiden Peak had no choice but to attach importance to this matter. All these were famous female disciples. They were incomparably beautiful and had outstanding strength. The majority of them were senior core disciples of Sage Realm. The strongest among them was a senior disciple of Sage, accomplished realm. She wasn't below Yishuan. They promptly saluted when they saw the people of Hidden Star Peak. Bai Jiansong didn't say anything. A mighty great sage had arrived. Could anyone dare to disrespect him? And Yi Ziwan's reputation had risen even more recently. He had become famous as the strongest under the great sage realm. They were well-known big personalities in the true Marshall University. They couldn't be compared with these ordinary core disciples. Yi Ziwan's status had risen crazily in the true Marshall University after he had killed several hundred experts of the late stage of half-step great sage realm. He was the most respected person apart from those aloof true disciples. Many people were unwilling to acknowledge this. However, they had no choice but to do so. A few people also curiously looked at Xiaoye since Yishuan was drawing her in by holding her small hand. They didn't know who this person was, that the high-level experts of Fair Maiden Peak had arrived personally in order to examine her qualifications. After all, she would have been admitted as an inner sect disciple as long as her qualifications weren't too bad. But it was highly unlikely to be admitted as a core disciple unless she displayed incredible qualifications. These female disciples were somewhat unwilling in the beginning. After all, they were core disciples who believed that these things were below their status. However, what would they say after they had seen that 2 legendary personas, Bai Jiansong and Yishuan, had personally brought her for the qualification test? The group of people who had come for a qualification test gradually stepped forward. The qualifications of the majority of the people were above yellow level. After all, their parents were the disciples of the true Marshall University. They might be ordinary disciples in the university. However, they were considered as top-notch talents in other places. Therefore, how could their children be inferior? A few people also displayed green-level qualifications from time to time. They would already be regarded as top-notch talents in other places. It was soon Xiaoye's turn. Xiaoye shot a glance at Yishuan. She pressed her hand on the steel after she got an affirmative look from Yishuan. Everyone had held their breath when Xiaoye had pressed her hand. Even Yishuan was no exception. He knew that Xiaoye certainly had outstanding innate talent. However, he didn't know the extent of it. Red. orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, purple. Everyone saw that all 7 colors had flashed alternatively on the qualification test steel. What is this? Yi Shiwen was baffled. The qualification test steel had emitted different lights on the basis of different qualifications soon after ordinary people had pressed it. However, it has emitted all 7 colors this time. What is going on here? Young brother Yi, this is 7-colored aptitude. My goodness, I've heard about such aptitude only in the legends. Bai Jiansong's vision had turned complicated as he looked at the surprised Xiaoya and Yi Shiwen. Even the qualifications of an ordinary Heaven's Pride expert would merely be of indigo level. A person like Big Brother also merely has purple level qualifications. However, this young girl has 7-colored qualification. In other words, her innate talent has surpassed purple level. Such qualification only appears in legends. The gods used to have such aptitude in the legends. Yi Shiwen was staring blankly. He had understood after listening to Bai Jiansong's words that Xiaoya seemed to possess incredible aptitude. God knows whether my qualification would have been even at the yellow level or not if I had given the test in her place. The entire true Martial University was alarmed in a split second after watching 7 rays of lights emitting from the qualification test steel that had intertwined and formed a light pillar and soared into the sky. Yi Shiwen suddenly realized, this matter will make huge noise. An incomparable tyrannical aura stretched across the vast sky. It was coming in this direction of the Ying Xian city. Who is this? Who has 7-colored aptitude? A huge shout came from the sky. Then a middle-aged man appeared. He had a stubble across his face. He looked somewhat unconventional and dejected. However, an intimidating, imposing aura was emitting from his body. In fact, the entire space had been distorted by his aura. He turned toward Xiaoya, who was standing in front of the qualification test steel. He immediately understood everything and burst into laughter. Heaven has bestowed a qualified disciple upon our Dangyang Peak to carry on the legacy. In the chief of Dangyang Peak. Fu. Baby girl, I want to recruit you as my last disciple and transmit the great techniques of Dangyang Peak to you. Yi Shiwen looked at that unconventional middle-aged man who was present before him, whilst being somewhat flabbergasted. Is this man the chief of Dangyang Peak? That's one of the top 10 great inheritances. He looks Fu * King ugly, like a middle-aged pedophile who would kidnap and sell young girls. Dangyang, how dare you fight over a disciple of our fair maiden Peak? A loud and clear shout came from the distant sky. To be continued. That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.